So we appreciate you being here. And Aaron Corbett arranged with Aaron to come and to give us some help on how we can maybe manage our roads and
Just share some information with you, give you some best management practice, you know, some ideas of what some other municipalities have done. Look at some pitfalls to avoid. Some of it's on a larger scale than what you guys are, but everything's relative as far as the dollars go.
yeah, for sure. Okay, well, we appreciate your time. Yeah.
Dollars to be cheaper than the other municipalities that are.
Yeah, the pavement preservation, I got it fairly steep.
Yeah, you gotta, yeah.
No? Okay. Yeah, I just want to share with you guys some of the stuff. We teach this class, just better management practice. We teach it on the private market all around the country. I've done this with probably 150, 200 municipalities in Utah, Arizona, and California. This presentation it gives some good basic concepts and ideas, talks about the tools that are available to you, where they work, where they don't work. And so we can go through that. I'm very informal with it. If you have a question, spit it out. If I can answer it, I will. If not, I can get back to you with an answer, hopefully. But it's not drilling down to very specific things that you guys might need. And I'm happy to do that with you guys. I've done some evaluations over your city. I think it's been 2 years ago that I drove all your roads and looked at them. But there's some very specific things that you guys can do to extend your dollars, make your dollars go farther. And that's our goal, is to provide value to you guys when it comes to pavement preservation. So
Will you be sharing your slide deck with us?
I can share some of it, yeah, if you're
Okay,
interested.
I think that would be help just to review, because we get so much.
I do have some PDFs that are typically the ones that are asked for that I can email to you guys.
That'd be great.
Yeah. So I work for a company called Holbrook Asphalt. They came out in, I want to say 99 or 2000 in St. George, Utah. Just small little paving company, seal coat company. We've grown into a pretty substantial company. Right now we're working in 27, 28 states with over 300 municipalities. Started in 2009 with 2 municipalities in Utah, which was Spanish Fork and Farmington were our first 2 cities. So it's grown fairly quickly. We've had to evolve over the years what we do. So maybe, sorry, I got a warning here. So I'm trying to do it's not working now. Let's see. Okay, there we go. Yeah, so what we teach is the essentials for lowering the cost and managing roads. So a lot of the information in this class comes from the national, and the bottom left of this screen up there is National Center for Pavement Preservation. They're affiliated with Michigan State University in Lansing, Michigan. They're probably the leader in thought, and data comes out of there, and the ITMA Academy out of Auburn University in Alabama. It's where a lot of the data comes from. Holbrook Asphalt is the company I work for. IPS is a sister company that provides material. Holbrook's kind of a contractor / consultant. So Mark Beatty, who sits on the board, and the reason why a lot of the information is from those few agencies, that he's been on the board of the National Center of Pavement Preservation, as well as on the director of ITMA Academy on their board. So he was dialed in. And what happened when he was on the board on the Rocky Mountain West of the National Center for Pavement Preservation, the director, Larry Gelhaus, he committed each region to put something together on pavement preservation. He says, look, we have this great, big, huge database. We've got all this great information, but it's going nowhere. We need to start dialogue. We need to start something. Now, we're not going to solve everybody's problem, but at least we can have a conversation that starts the dialogue to help people understand how to manage their roads better. And so Mark was on the board of the Rocky Mountain West when we put this together. And this is our version of it to kind of help introduce us to you guys and give you guys some good, valuable information. We always start off with something has nothing to do with roads other than cars drive on them. So any of you people fancy yourself car gurus? So what the Consumer Reports has done, they've taken a 2020 reliability ratings. They take the maintenance records of, I think it's 3-year-old cars, and they categorize them into best, good, fair, and worst. Those right now are out of order. Anybody care to take a stab at putting them in order? Okay.
Dodge Kia.
Kia is good and Dodge is
Yeah,
I would
Dodge
think-
is worse.
I think Dodge was fair and Kia was worse, but,
Kia worse.
Okay.
oh.
Now, I would never purchase a car based on one study, but this is the truth. These are the facts. This is the information that Consumer Reports puts out. Obviously, Honda and Acura have very good marketing, and they have some good flash in their commercials and stuff. But
I believe it.
it just goes, the reason why we put this in there is there's a huge, tremendous value in getting educated, especially when it comes to pavement preservation. Because if you miss the boat and you do something that doesn't provide you any value, you're not only destroying that year's budget, but the next budget you have to use to fix it. And that's hard. And then you're also shortening the life of your roads. You're shortening, or you're lessening the quality of ride, and you're increasing your maintenance over the years. So that's what we really want to do, is we want to get educated so you're doing things to your roads that provide value. And agencies can become political and media focused, and this is where we look at some of the bad things that have happened that can happen. So I work with the city of Tucson. They've gone throughout the years and they've done nothing. They did nothing for years and years and years. And then they hired an engineering firm to come in and tell them what they needed to do for their roads. And this is what because things were getting so political, like whenever they would do something, a festival cost $312,000, they said, well, the city could have fixed 11,000 potholes, or funds to support a local theater. They could have fixed 148. Things got very, very nasty down there because they hadn't done anything for a long time and their roads were in just really bad shape. It got so bad the churches changed their names, Save Our Streets Christian Church. I do work with them and they've done some really good things over the years. So what they ended up doing, they got some reports. They had an engineering firm come in and explain to them that, 55% of their residential roads were in failed or poor condition, 25% of their major streets. And what did that mean in dollars? It meant that they had an $875 million problem. 550 to repair the poor residential roads, 148 to repair the arterials, and 175 million just to keep the good roads in good condition. So,
You're making us feel a lot better.
well, and everything's relative. I'm pretty sure your budget.
This is all the same, just the numbers are changed.
Yeah, it's relative because your budget is what it is, their budget is what it is, but they didn't have it in their budget. So what did they do? They went and they got a $100 million bond. The city council decided they'd throw in $20 million, but that still left them with $755 million needed to get their roads back up. Now they're on their second $100 million bond. And they're making progress, I would say, but they're not doing things. Things got political, so they want to show we're doing a bunch of stuff and it's a paintbrush. And so what happens is when you take a bond out, you guys well know this, if it's not a valuable tool and it's not serving you for long term, say 2 years down the road, your roads are back in the same position they were. They look good for 2 years, but they really didn't benefit you in the long term as making them last longer or provide a better ride quality. So you've spent that money and it's gone. Now you got to pay the bond back plus interest and your roads are in no better shape. I would say right now they're doing about 75% of their budget that they're spending is good value. 25%, I think they could be better. But it's because it's very political and people making the decisions that don't understand how roads deteriorate. And so that's where they want it to look good. They want it to be the news. They want it to be on the news. They don't, you need to really focus in and make a difference. So, and another one, Mark and Dr. Heitzman from the NCAT track out of Alabama was out doing some APWA classes, something similar to this. And they had a guy come in, the public works director for Houston County, Alabama. And he says, okay, guys, I need you guys to tell me what to do. I've got these 500 miles worth of roads. They're the massive road project 20 years ago, come back to haunt Houston County. In the 90s, we did 500 miles of road. And unfortunately, doing all those roads at the same time meant that they would all deteriorate at the same time, and that moment is upon us. Houston County doesn't have $30 million at its disposal, but it's not going away. The problem's not going away. So what do you think Mark and Dr. Heitzman told their public works director? What do you think we told him? Because he said, you guys have the answers. Tell us what to do with our roads. And unfortunately, you can't put the genie back in the bottle. Once the roads deteriorate, it's very expensive and very costly to repair them. But what we did teach him is we sat him down and said, hey, look, we can teach you some strategies. We can teach you some philosophies on what to do so you don't find yourself in this situation again. And I think this Houston County, I think they're still in the process of trying to take care of those 500 miles of roads, but they've made a huge dent in it because of some of the mindset that they ended up changing from a worst first to a best first process. That helps a ton. And so
You said
Best first.
best first approach is the best way to spend your money. I'll explain that to you in a little bit here and some of the data that comes behind that. So the basics of pavement preservation is that, okay, so you have your asphalt, and when it goes down, it's nice and pretty and black. And asphalt's really basic. There's not a lot to it. It's two components. You've got the aggregate or the rock, and then you have the asphalt binder or the glue that holds the rock in place. Now, the rock's been here for millions of years, and it'll be here millions of years after it's gone. The important part, the reason why the gold bars are there, and I don't think, yeah, it will show up. The gold bars right there are there because that's the important part of the pavement, the binder that holds the rock in place. We need to take care of that. That's what makes the roads last longer. And if you don't take care of them, that's what it falls apart, and it loses its flexibility, its adhesion qualities. And so you see it, it'll gray out fairly quickly. You'll see it gray out. It'll have some raveling, and then you get some cracks in it, and eventually you start to get moisture down in the base and you have failures. So our goal is to preserve this so you get to these stages in the pavement's life further and further down the road. You want to take a 20-year pavement, make it a 40-year pavement. That's why you're going to lower your ownership cost of that stuff. But the key is, there's the key, it says to stop oxidation, and that is the primary concern, oxidative aging to your pavement. That's just the basics to it, what is destroying your pavement. Now, there are a couple, I don't want to say causes. I know it says causes up there, but oxidation is going to happen at the time of construction. It's going to start. But there are a couple accelerators to oxidative aging. You have to take a guess at what those are. I'm looking for two things. Heat, sun.
Weather, just weather in general.
Yeah, it's moisture.
Yeah,
So the two
moisture.
things that we're looking for are the primary accelerators of oxidative aging are the UV rays and the moisture. And you guys get the double
Get
whammy
both.
here. Yeah, you got the high elevation, so you get the intense UV rays, you get the heat in the summer, and then in the wintertime, you get the moisture that sits on the road and gets pushed down in that pavement. Now, those aren't causing the oxidation, but they're accelerating the process of the oxidative aging of your pavement. So if we can slow the effect of those two things on your pavement, on a residential roadway, on a road that doesn't need a wearing course, and I don't think you really have any roads in your city that would need a wearing course. Now, you do have some steepness issues and some other issues that would require you to maintain some friction. But if we can limit the effect of those two things, you can really stretch out your life of your pavement. So here's some material that's put together by Ashtoe and Tripp. It's called Rough Roads Ahead. Basically what this was is it was a report that was put together on a national level that said, hey, look, if we don't change our process and we don't change what we do, we've got some rough roads ahead. It's available in PDF format on Ashtoe and Tripp's website. But we pulled one page out of it. I mean, if you like pavement preservation, it's a really good read. If not, it'll probably put you to sleep. But what it is it's
We
really
love
good
it.
for
Just so
somebody,
you know, we love
for the
it.
people that hold the purse strings and are deciding where the funding goes. This is an excellent report because it helps you understand where your money is best spent. And we pulled this one page out of here because we liked it. We live by this rule. It's called the life cycle of the road. You start with the design phase. You have a construction phase, initial deterioration, visible deterioration, and then you get down to disintegration and failure. And we always ask this question. When do you think most municipalities get involved in preservation? What stage? 4 in visible deterioration?
It's 5.
It's
Because our residents come to us at 4, and by
Right.
the time we can pay for it, maybe it's at
We were
5.
doing this class for the city of
Perfect.
Orlando, Florida, and I guess I had the best answer I ever had from their public works director was 4.9.
Oh,
Right before it falls apart, they want the magic bullet to come in there and make it brand new again. And unfortunately, when you get to that point, it's hard. And I just like this part of it where it says during the first few years of use, this road surface has experienced some initial deterioration caused by traffic volume, rain, snow, solar radiation, temperature changes. At this stage, the road appears to be in good condition, providing a smooth ride. Preservation strategies during stage 3 will sustain a smooth ride, preserve the foundation, extend the life of and reduce the need for costly reconstruction later on. I just love that. You can't be said any better than that.
I have a question. So,
Yeah.
we're putting in here, more of the natural causes for this, the rain, the snow, the solar, temperature.
Right. The environment.
We do environmental, yeah. So we do have a lot of issues with the wear and tear. We have a lot of snow, so we have the snow equipment on there.
Clouds are
heavy,
harder than anything on it. Yep.
and then we also put salt on. So what is the,
Salt affects it too, but
not
it's,
too much?
I would say you would be more concerned with the UV rays and the moisture. The salt
Good.
is not good. I mean, you need it and it's
But
a
we don't want to
necessary
have to get
evil,
away from it.
but the moisture and the UV are the two primary
So as long as we're keeping the
accelerators.
snow off the road, then that we're actually helping the road.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Because when the snow sits on the road, it doesn't just sit there.
Right.
The snow builds up and then it gets pushed down into the whole cross section of the
Mm-hmm.
pavement, which accelerates the oxidative aging down through the pavement. So yeah, you want to avoid that as best you can.
Okay.
And so we've seen something similar to this in a lot of classes. I mean, I see this all the time in my world. I don't know if you guys see it in your world, but on just the graph on the vertical axis, you got pavement condition. It's nice and green and pretty. And then on the horizontal, you have time. And in some instances, when you get into higher volume roads, you can have traffic and loading on that as well. But the white line, that's what you kind of, I describe that as what you see at the surface. So it's a visual inspection. And the National Center puts, where's that? Right here, about 22, 23 years if you do nothing to the road. And there's obviously some roads that are out there a lot longer than that. But the National Center says it's serviceable rideability is done at about 22 years if you don't do anything to it. But what a lot of people don't see is there was a guy named Dr. Condell, and he was like, okay, I see this at the surface. I see the aging. I see how things are falling apart when they're falling apart, but he wanted to know why. What's the primary cause? What can I use to most accurately describe how the pavement's aging or the health of the pavement? And can I stand up? Can I walk up there? Because my pointer's not working.
Do you mind carrying your microphone? I'm sorry, because we've got, I don't know if we have
No,
anybody online.
that works.
but we,
So when we look at this, the pavement starts to age, it looks nice, and then it gets to here in this point, and then it drops off really quick. This is actually called the waterfall. It starts to get deteriorated at a rate where it's really hard to catch and do anything. What Dr. Condell discovered is he looked at this. So this is a surface. It's like a visual, the white line. The black line is kind of like an MRI view. It's what's going on under surface. And what it measures is the flexibility of the pavement. And what you'll see here is there's a substantial drop right out of the gate. And the damage is done. It doesn't manifest itself until here at the surface, but the damage is done here. So what we really need to concentrate on is taking and flattening this black line out, because that in turn will flatten and extend the life of your road itself, the white line. So I'll refer back to this later on in the presentation, but that's really the key to extending your road's life expectancy and quality of use, is to affect that Condell curve and stretch it out for as long as you can.
You mentioned the load. So we do have construction, so we get heavy trucks coming or otherwise
Right.
on our roads. A lot of residents will say, well, it's because there's so many heavy trucks on the road that it's now down to here. So what you're saying is it was probably back when they thought it looked okay, but then by the time it got here, that load then was too much for it, but it wasn't the cause of the damage.
When you're talking about loading and stuff like that's more of an engineering or a design
Oh.
thing that is more, you need to make sure you have design. When you're talking about maintenance, it's environmental.
Okay,
And when you get on like I-15 or Highway 89, where you have 10,000 or,
Right.
50,000 trips a day, and they're 45, 75 miles an hour, you're actually wearing the surface out. So that's when you need to get into a wearing course.
okay.
But when it comes to loading, like heavy trucks and stuff like that goes all the way back to the beginning to the design of the cross section of pavement, the base underneath it.
So are you going to then show us how we extend our life, not just in this natural aging, but because we have, I mean, everyone was building as our city came down from the below and it's coming up. So now those trucks have to go farther up and down.
Right.
And it's one of the things our residents.
It's
talk to us
hard.
about.
And what I would say from my perspective as a maintenance guy, I'm not a construction or a build guy. I don't design the cross section of pavement. I'm here to take care of it once it's put down. But what I would recommend for you guys is, say you've got a new phase of a subdivision going up and you know you're going to have a lot of haul trucks going up and down that road in the future. What my recommendation would be to you guys is don't spend any money on this road until that's done. And then when it's done, take care of it. Because if you're not going to be able to avoid the damage at all, wait until the stresses are gone and then fix it. So it's about timing.
Well, that's good. That means we don't have to do anything.
Yeah, we're good.
Yeah. So,
Somebody kick a can.
yeah. I mean, sometimes you have to do something for safety reasons. You can never neglect your maintenance altogether, but sometimes it's just, you got to bite the bullet and decide, wait, we don't want to spend any more money on this road until we're ready to reconstruct it. This is just another slide stating from the, yeah.
Corbett?
A really good example of all of this is Thousand Oaks, right? So Thousand Oaks, in reality, we have done nothing to Thousand Oaks since it was laid down in 2002. So Thousand Oaks, the asphalt's 20 years old. The only thing that was done was a chip seal that failed. Now you look around in Thousand Oaks and you see where it looks really odd. The surface isn't uniform from side to side. You can see where the chip seal peeled off because it didn't stick. Now there was an issue with it. I don't remember what happened, but you look at the rest of the roads in Thousand Oaks and how they're alligatoring. The cracks go all the way across the road in a lot of spots, even in the places where we haven't had truck traffic. Now you go from the basin up to out the back of Deep Forest. Okay, you had 500 truckloads of dirt go that section. But all the other roads in Thousand Oaks didn't see that damage, and they're just as bad. So you can't blame the damage on that short section on the 500 truckloads. The damage is what we're talking about here is from neglect.
So,
Well, that helps explain some things to us.
yeah. And so this is some other information from the Foundation of Pavement Preservation. It just kind of backs up what the National Centers put out. What we believe in is oxidative aging of pavements begins at the time of construction and continues throughout the pavement's life. However, most oxidative aging happens within the first 2 to 4 years. So this is where we had a hard time. When we first engaged with Spanish Fork, Jamie Chappell, do you guys know Jamie? Took us about 18 months to really engage with them and get away from their worst first process. Because what happens in the worst first process, you eat up all your budget, and then you don't have anything to do on the maintenance side on the front end of work. But it's really hard when you've got a road that's 2 years old and you're telling you guys, the city
And it
council,
looks
hey, we
okay.
need to spend, this is where we need to focus the first part of our money. And they're like, yeah, but I got these guys over here. This road, this subdivision will kill me if I do this road and I don't do anything on their 30-year-old road that's falling apart. But their 30-year-old road that's falling apart is basically going to cost you the same whether you do it this year, 2 years from now, 3 years from now. It's going to be essentially the same. Now, the road that's still in good shape, if it falls out of maintenance into rehab, your dollars go up exponentially. And then if it falls out of rehab into reconstruction where your 30-year-old is, then the dollars go up exponentially again. So the return on your investment is a lot better in the maintenance mode on your roads than it is in rehabilitation or reconstruction. So what we ended up doing with Spanish Fork is we got on their local channel and we tried to help the residents understand what we were doing. And Jamie says, okay, I'm in. This was back in 2009. And Jamie said, I'm in, but if this doesn't work, you guys got to give me a job. So he flipped his approach. From the way I understand it, the majority of his dollars were spent on the back end, and he had a little bit to spend on the front end with some crack sealings and potholes over the winter. But when we went in there, we flipped that. Then we put the majority of his money on the front end, taking care of his good roads for about 5-6 years. And then he was, still kept some money in the budget for the back end because you can't neglect it for safety reasons. You got to have some of that there. And so what that allowed him to do was, okay, 5-6 years, now we got all of our roads that are in good shape. They're taken care of and they're being preserved. Now we can take and shift some of that money back to the back end and start rebuilding some of those roads. But when you rebuild those roads, they immediately go to the front of the line for preservation because those are the most valuable tool that you can do is on a brand new road. And so what he was able to do was now his overall road network was in decline because they were worst first. And he had the big boom housing through the 2000s. So what we did over this 5 years is we kind of flattened it out. And then he started rebuilding some of the really bad roads and then putting them into the maintenance thing. And now his overall network is starting to increase. And he's done an excellent job of that. Actually got him on camera a couple months ago. I'll send you guys the video of Jamie.
Okay.
I know I speak of Jamie because he's right here, your next door neighbor, and they've done an excellent job in Spanish Fork of preserving their roads and making they had to make a thought process, a change in thought to start managing their roads more like the National Center recommended, like the IPMA Academy, like they recommended. And it is, the data just shows that's the best way to manage your roads. And here's some information. When you get involved early, you're up here at the top. It doesn't show up on the screen, but when you're on the green, you get involved early when the pavement's still healthy. And the preservation is a lot cheaper to do. When you get down in intermediate rehabilitation or late rehabilitation, the dollars you spend on those treatments is substantially more, and they're short-lived because you have an underlying problem that you're not getting rid of. You're just covering it up. So just again, the higher return on investment from AASHTO. Every dollar spent keeping a good road good precludes spending 6 to 14 to rebuild one that has deteriorated. I'd much rather spend $1 on a road than $16, $14 on a road. And that's, out of everything we say, those are, key points to remember. This was a subdivision. So I showed you Tucson. They're kind of the poster child of what not to do in the past. They're getting better. I want to be.
So if you help us, we won't become your poster
I don't want to
child.
be completely disparaging towards them because they have done some good
We
things.
can leave Tucson, that person.
Yeah.
Okay.
But this was put together for a town just north of Tucson that has younger infrastructure. City council come to us and they said, well, what do we need as ownership? So they had a subdivision, 250,000 square feet. And it was 20 years old and the pavement was gone. It was deteriorated and the city had to repave it. And they said, okay, so what can we expect over the next 30 years after we repave this? What is it going to cost us to own this pavement? And we kind of said, well, it kind of depends. If you look at the data, you look up here at the top where the green bar is, at the PCI of the pavement is a 96 to 100. You're getting involved at year 1, 2, maybe. You're budgeting every year $10,000. And then you go down to year 7 or 8, and these are relative, they're not exact, where the PCI is 81 to 85, and that's still a really decent, good pavement. Now, instead of 10 grand a year, you need to have budgeted $25,000 a year. And you notice the longer you go without doing anything, those dollars per year go up substantially. It's a lot easier to manage a road when it's healthy than it is when it's not. And again, Larry Gelhaus, many maintenance practices. He was the director. He's since retired. I run into him at conferences around the country. He's still a real thought leader in the industry, but we live by this. Many maintenance practices have not been effective because they were applied reactively to roads in poor condition instead of proactively to roads. Reactively to roads in poor condition instead of proactively to roads in good condition. Succinctly stated, the correct approach is the right treatment on the right road at the right time, because there is not one treatment that fits everything. So these are some of the tools that are available to you guys. There's a fog seal, which is basically an oil and a water mixture. There's seal coats where they take a fog seal and they add some type of filler material to it, like sand or copper shot or tire rubber or something. And then there's slurry, which is an aggregate and a rock, a oil mixture. And then there's microsurface that's very similar to a slurry. And then you have a high density mineral bond. I'll talk about that a little bit. It's a thinner treatment, but it's very effective when it's the right thing to do. And then you have some chip seals where you put oil down and then aggregate on top of it. And so I'll just kind of go through each one of these, talk about pros and cons of each one of them.
What ones do we do right now, Corbett? I mean, we always talk about chip seal, but do we do some of these others? Okay.
I was told we couldn't do chip seal because the roads are too steep. The majority of the roads are too steep. So the machine runs over the truck.
I've done some pretty steep roads in Cedar Hill.
The truck runs away with the machine.
Yeah,
Okay.
you do have a problem when you get really steep. It does.
Okay.
So we start off with fog seal. Obviously, it's the cheapest thing you can do. The pavement extension is also you get the less value out of that. Public acceptance is high. Why do you think that is?
Because they see it,
Looks pretty.
It's nice and pretty and black, yeah.
and they can see the work being done
Right,
quickly.
right. But unfortunately, you'd have to do this about every 12 to 18 months to be any somewhat effective at all, because the life cycle of it is 12 to 18 months. It doesn't have a lot of value. As a standalone, I would say that would be its problem, is its short life cycle. But where it works really well is in conjunction with the chip seal. It helps with rock retention. It helps a lot with public acceptance. Those are your benefits there.
Is that what somebody does to their driveway?
No, they typically would do a seal coat or something similar to that looks like that. A fog seal, you see a lot of the DOT projects, they'll spray it on the shoulders on the rumple strips. I've done some stuff on some rumple strips and shoulders, but so here's some data that goes with fog seals that comes from Texas DOT. We're growing exponentially in Texas right now. They're thought leaders. They're pushing the envelope on everything. So when we see some research come out of there, we like to grab it. But it was put together by the Texas Department of Transportation acts the Texas Transportation Institute at Texas A&M to do research on fog seals, helping rejuvenate the binder. Their findings were that the permeability of the pavement was not significantly reduced. Effects of fog seal treatments in oxidative aging were not observed. In summary, engineers should reassess their cost-benefit analysis when using fog seals as a preservation tool. They have some benefit though, but in conjunction with, like I said, chip seal, helping hold rock, help public acceptance. Then you step up into something as a seal coat where they take a fog seal and they add some fillers to it. It's usually like a mineral sealer, a mastic sealer, polymer modified sealer, a name of the filler that's in it. The price point ticks up a little bit. The pavement extension goes up a little bit. You're looking at a 1 to 3 year life cycle on this. The pavement extension is a little more than a fog seal. Public acceptance, again, is very high. I typically will recommend these for people that are have a business that they're looking to flip, and they don't want to spend too much money on their pavement, but if they need it to look good for a little while, this is probably one of the tools I would say, do this on your parking lot, get it sold, and let somebody else deal with actually preserving your pavement. That's kind of what you're getting after 2.5 years. It's obviously better than a fog seal, but still pretty limited on its capabilities. I don't want to talk about that. Then there's slurry. So type 1, 2, and 3 kind of denotes the size. A type 1 is 1/8 inch aggregate. Type 2 is 1/4 inch, and type 3 is 3/8 inch. What it is they take an aggregate sand mixture, put oil and water in a pug mill, mix it up, and then put it down in a grade box and drag it. So the aggregate kind of determines the thickness of the material. And it's really good. Where this works exceptionally well is when you have a road that has a low crack ratio and it's had some aging to it, where you've got some pits and you've got some of the fines that are gone out from around your rocks and your coarse aggregate sticking up to where you want to add some aggregate back in. That's where this works really good. But you want to have a low crack ratio because the cracks will project back through fairly quickly in about 18 months. So that's where it works really well.
Can you describe aggregate?
The aggregate, just the rocks. So
yeah,
there's
small rock.
there's a gradation. So there's like a sand, and then there's a little bit bigger rock, then there's a little bit bigger rock.
Okay.
But in the gradation, in a type 1, 1/8 inch is the largest rock in that. And type 2, 1/4 inch is the largest
I
rock.
see.
But yeah, so, and it'll help, like I said, it'll add some aggregate back into your pavement, and it'll give you a nice gauze temporary Band-Aid over top of it. But that's where it's really good. Where it doesn't work so good is when you're trying to be proactive and you have a nice, tight, smooth, new pavement, it has a hard time biting onto that. So when your plows come along, it delaminates and sheds off into the, you lose a lot of the material. Now, granted, with the slurry, it's a rough surface and you have rocks and oil. When the oil cures, as the cars drive on them, it fractures the rocks and it sheds off. It's just the nature of it. It sheds a little bit off. But yeah, when you're trying to be proactive and you have a nice, smooth, tight mat on your pavement, it has a hard time sometimes biting that and holding on to that smooth mat.
Is it cured by time or temperature?
It's UV.
UV.
All of these except one are UV cures.
Okay.
So you want nice, sunny, hot days is what you want. That's just some of the material. That's what you look like. One of those is brand new. One of them is 6 months old. So you can kind of see you have those rocks that fracture off and shed off for a little while. That's usually gone after a year or two. But it's just the nature of it. It is a really good tool. It's probably the most widespread tool. It's fairly cheap. But as effective, it's not necessarily effective all the time. And then you have a microsurface. So it's very similar to a slurry. You see the price point ticks up quite a bit. Your pavement extension is fairly good. Your public acceptance ticks down. And when I say ticks down, like with slurry, I don't know, do you guys have community mailboxes?
Mm-hmm.
So when all the inspectors walk to their community mailbox and they're looking at your roads, they don't particularly like slurry and micro because it's rough and their kids will skin their knee. And when you're riding your bike, it's a very abrasive surface treatment. The microsurface is probably the treatment of choice by UDOT. But where this works better than slurry, so there's a couple. This, like I said, everything in here is a UV brake except this product. This product is a chemical brake. So the reason it was, back in the 80s on the Autobahn, they were having rutting issues. And so they were using slurry as their treatment type. And when your roads are rutting, you want to flatten them out. So they were trying to do that with slurry, but with slurry, as cars drive on it, it just contours back to the road's contour. So you don't get rid of the ruts. So what they did is they did some engineering. They put some cement, they put some polymers, they used a different type of aggregate in a slurry to make microsurface. What it does, it allows you to rut fill up to 1.5 inches. But the U.S. Department of Justice has decided that that's more of an overlay. So if you do that, you have to do all your ADA upgrades with your project. So the two benefits of microsurfacing are it's stackable up to 1.5 inches for some ruts. And it's also a chemical brake, so you can get back on it really quick. I've seen cars back driving on this within 45 minutes. And like a slurry, you're talking 4 or 5 hours. So those are the benefits and some of that.
What are those ADA upgrades? I'm just curious.
The ramps, signage, your ADA, if you have sidewalks all have to be up. Your curb and gutter has to be up if you have curb and gutter. Your lights, your crosswalks, signage.
Cool, we don't have any of that.
I know.
Yeah,
It might be good.
I don't think that's gonna.
But I have seen municipalities go away from using microsurfacing because of that, because it doubled the price of their project to do the ADA upgrades. So, some more information coming out of Texas focuses on permeability. So what that means is you're still getting, there's voids, 8 to 12% voids on a new, 10% after 6 months. What that means is you're still getting some air and maybe some moisture in there. You need to be careful that you don't get moisture under your pavement, because then especially here you get that freeze thaw and you could pop it off. This is for microsurfacing and slurry. Just be careful. If it's good for the road, I think here in this environment, it works well. If it's a rougher road with a low crack ratio, you can have some instances of failures. The difference between slurry failure and a microsurfacing failure, a slurry failure all the material will just kind of shed and slough off. It'll just kind of be a roughy, sandy, and it'll slough off.
I've seen that.
Now, if you have a failure with microsurface, it can come up in sheets because it's got that polymers and the cement in it that holds it together. So it can become a safety hazard if it fails. I'm not saying.
So then for Utah then, because our weather is so you know, for us especially, it's wet or hot.
These are great tools in
Uh-huh.
Utah. I don't want to disparage you from using them in Utah. Just be aware that they're probably not protecting your pavement as well as some people have previously thought. Like I said, UDOT's number one tool is
So
microsurface.
do we, if we were to use that, because our snow can come pretty early, then would be only July basically be the only month?
Now,
we
you
put
could
in?
get it. You could, like me, I'm here June, July, and August, and then I'm out. And I go back to Vegas and Phoenix and Texas and Florida.
Okay,
But June, July, and August for your preservation tools. And you can go a little bit further. With some of the seal coats, they can put some additives in them to get it cured earlier. But yeah, you could be summer months.
just
You'll
one
be
of
all
the
right.
things that we find in our city is because we have, we don't have as many miles of roads, it's hard to get people up here.
Right.
So that's,
I'm-
you know, all of the,
If I did a project for you guys, I would piggyback you on Mapleton, Spanish Fork, Salem projects.
okay.
And I'm there every year doing those three at least, and a bunch more in Utah County. But
Okay,
so then there's the high density mineral bond. It's probably the newest but fastest growing treatment in the country right now. You see the price point ticks up. Pavement extension is fairly good, and the public again loves the nice, pretty black roads. Where this wouldn't work so well is, like I say, if you have Highway 89, I-15, it's not a wearing course. This is strictly to protect your roads from the environment, not traffic. Now, I use HA5 in conjunction with another tool where we do higher volume, higher speed roads, and it works great because you get the benefits of both tools. But as a standalone, HA5 is not for a high speed, high volume road. It's more for lower volume, lower speed residential roadways where the environment is your concern, not necessarily the traffic. Traction is neutral to new pavement. We've done some studies that showed it increased pavement a little bit in some instances, but for the most part, it's neutral. So if you pave a road and you're comfortable with the friction coefficient of that road in that use case, HA5 should be fine on that. But if there is an instance where you feel like you probably should add some friction, like if you're coming down a hill into a stop sign, I would probably steer you to another treatment. I've done that for Cedar Hills several times. Alpine, we've done it a few times. Highland's done it a few times on some of their just specific little roads, like a block coming into a stop sign. They're flat up here and then it just drops down steep into a stop sign. We had to hold the HA5 back, and then we did what's called a bonded matrix down to the stop sign where it's a chip seal and a HA5 cap.
And with the two different treatments coming in from the same road, that doesn't affect any, I mean,
It looks very similar, just you'll have a little bit of a texture change as you get closer to the terminating time where you're trying to increase your friction. So, and then you get chip seal. Chip seal is probably the most, how do I say it? The price fluctuation. You get volume discount with chip seal. So like if you're Utah County and you're out doing on the west side of the lake out there and you got 15 miles of straight road you're doing chip seal on, you're going to get a great price. But if you're trying to do it on some windy, slower, tight roads, you're probably not going to get as good as price. And I don't really recommend chip seal as a standalone project in residential areas, especially like if you have cul-de-sacs or tight corners, because that aggregate rolls out. Now, we do a combination of treatments where I have done it in residential in Cedar Hills and some other cities here in Utah County, and it works great. But you just have to make sure that you're doing the right treatment. I don't want to get in a failure like we do into roundabouts, and I have to do a couple of roundabouts with some of this, and I just hate it because the roundabouts are hard. No matter what you do in a roundabout, it's hard. And I avoid chip seals in roundabouts. I'd like to do microsurfacing, but it's kind of cost prohibitive just to bring it in and do it in a roundabout.
UDOT does a chip seal with a fog coat.
With a fog?
Yeah.
Yeah. I've done roundabouts in Cedar Hills. I've done roundabouts in Vineyard with what I call the bonded matrix, where we do a chip seal and we do HA5 on top of it. And it works exceptionally well. Now you see the price point is kind of up. The pavement extension is high. The public acceptance is low. We had some guys in Florida tell us, yeah, that should be a -2 stars on public acceptance. It gets a bad rap, but it's a really valuable tool. It's really valuable in certain instances. But you can mitigate it. This road was done. I don't want to be disparaging towards city council members, but I got to tell this story. This road was done during an election cycle, and there was a city council member in this city that changed his platform Said no more chip seals. That was his big stance, was no more chip seals in our city. He was elected handily. They still do chip seals in this city. They just make sure they're doing them in the right roads, on the collectors, on the straight roads, and keeping them. But things can get political. Sometimes it works for you, sometimes it doesn't. And these are more rehabilitation, things that are necessary to have in your toolbox, but we want to avoid. You know, you got the mill and overlay, you got the full depth reclamation, cold or hot in place recycling. I don't know that you guys, to do a cold and hot recycling, would have to probably do all the roads in your town to make it worth your while. Now, the mill and overlay, that's probably something you should have. The full depth reclamation, that should be something that you should have in your coffers, your ability to do. Again, we go back to the right treatment, right surface, right time. So I want to take the last 15 minutes and talk about HA5 a little bit, if you're okay with that. I was trying to be pretty straightforward on pavement preservation. HA5 is what your neighbors are doing. Salem's doing, Mapleton, Spanish Fork. That's the product that we started with Mapleton and Spanish Fork in 2009. Go ahead.
Oh, yeah.
I'm just, yeah.
Yeah. What do you need?
Can we take a 2-second pause?
Yeah, for sure. I just tried to hurry to get done before 6.
Yeah, no, thank you for doing that.
Uh-huh.
There is dinner. So.
It's just sitting in the kitchen getting cold.
All
If you haven't
right, go get it. I
I just wondered if we could take a 2-second break and go grab it. I'm
yeah,
hungry.
oh, for sure,
Okay.
for sure.
Is it in the kitchen?
Fastest growing pool in the country.
Sorry.
You're right. Where it's good and effective is on the front end of the pavement where the pavement's in good condition, a PCI of 70 and above. And what it's really good at is, like right here, you have the untreated pavement, you have the UV light penetrating, you have the moisture penetrating, which is accelerating your oxidative aging. With some of the conventional municipal sealers like slurry and seal coat, it doesn't help it, but it's still, you get that penetration of the UV and moisture going into the pavement and oxidizing and aging that pavement. Where HA5 is exceptional at is it's impermeable to UV and moisture. And this is where, you remember back when I showed you the Condell curve? So when you look at these pavements, all these are basically installed. You know, the pavements were, this one's 4 years older than these two, but this was installed 99, 99, 95. So when we look at this and we talk to the residents or say, okay, which one of these do you want on the surface? Do you want this one, or this one? They're all going to say they want this. And that's a great benefit. But what we look at is you look at the cross section of the pavement. That's healthy. It's 4 years older than these pavements, but it's younger because it's got the oils and the asphaltenes and those resins in that pavement where these have oxidized out. I'm not saying that this was the wrong treatment. This was a chip seal. This was a type 2 slurry. They're probably the correct treatment, but it just goes to show you they were all done about 7 or 8 years old pavement. And this one is a lot healthier after a treatment of each. And these ones are bone dry now, so they're going to be more susceptible to cracking. That's what HA5 does. That's how it extends the life of your pavement. And that's where the Condell curve is flattened, where now you're stretching that pavement out to be, instead of a 25-year-old pavement, now you're going to get a 30, 35, 40-year-old pavement. And that's really where your savings is going to come in. And so here's some research. I wanted to show you a couple of research projects. It's not just me as a representative of Holbrook Asphalt or, you know, HA5. Now let me say something to you. So HDMB, high density mineral bond, that is the category that APWA put out. That's the product category. HA5 is our product that meets that specification that the APWA put out. And so this guy's name, his name is Shakir, I butcher his name every time, Shakir Shinawat. Never met the guy, but he used to work for Caltrans, California Transportation. He did 19 years. He's one of the engineers. Then he went out private and he started doing some research and stuff. And he did a study on HA5, and what he come up with was HA5 reduces the hardening of the pavement by 67%. So what does that mean? That means the red line is if you did nothing. So you had a 15-year-old pavement, it would be as hard and crack as much as a 15-year-old pavement would. But if you'd installed HA5 on it at 90, it would act like a 9-year-old pavement. It was 15 years old, but it would act like a 9-year-old pavement, so on and so forth. A 20-year-old pavement would act like a 12-year-old pavement. A 25-year-old pavement would act like a 15-year-old pavement. So you're basically reducing the age of the pavement by your preservation strategy. And he come up with his reasoning behind that is because it's impermeable. So if you look, the blue bars are moisture, the green bars are air. And so if you look at a slurry and the top, the tan area is impermeable, the white area is semi-permeable, and the blue area is highly permeable. So you're getting penetration down in there. So slurry, moisture now, you're still highly permeable. Microsurface, you're a little less permeable to water, still highly permeable to air. HMA, just because it's bare asphalt, it's going to be permeable. But a brand new HA5 is impermeable to moisture and impermeable to air. And he went so far as to study some 8-year-old installations where it was still impermeable to moisture and semi-impermeable to air. That's where you're getting that benefit, and you're protecting those oils. You're not only keeping the bad things, which is the UV rays and the moisture, out of the pavement, but you're keeping the oils and resins in the pavement. You're not allowing them to oxidize. You're sealing it up tight. And that's where a lot of the benefit comes. And what is it? It's a specialized non-ionic emulsion, so it's right near neutral on the pH scale. It's engineered to carry minerals that are not compatible with an anionic and cationic emulsion. So all the other treatments that we went through today, the fog seal, seal coats, micro slurry, they're all either cationic or anionic. And then when you start adding polymers or you're adding aggregate, sand, or whatever to them, it changes the pH. And you get to a certain point to where you can't put anything else in it. So this starts off with a very stable base emulsion. It's called, it's a non-ionic emulsion. And so we can add some things to that you can't add into the other things. They won't play nice together. So if I did a project of HA5 and I still had some residual in our tanks, and then I went and I tried to load up the truck with a seal coat or a slurry oil or something like, they would congeal, or the aggregates would just fall out of it. It would be a mess. We'd spend a week cleaning our equipment out because the oils don't play nice together. But what that does is it's very stable. It allows us to put some angular aggregates in it. They're still fine, but they're still angular. It really helps prevent aging. It's really what it's I call, like, a seal coat would be an SPF 15 and HA5 would be an SPF 90. You know, that's kind of what it is.
So this is all the cities that you've done things in?
These are the states. Like I said, we started in Utah with 2 cities,
I
which
just meant the Utah cities behind.
Spanish Fork. Well, those are a bunch of cities. Texas,
Landing,
Kansas. Yeah. I work mostly Utah, Arizona, and California. I don't know what's wrong with Arkansas. We can't get in there. They're, 30 miles.
Because they have trees growing in the middle of their streets.
I have some really good friends who I used to work with in Arizona that they run municipalities in Arkansas, and I can't. They're like this. It's hard to get to. So
These are
we're
current clients or past clients?
current clients. A lot of these. We're up over. That's even not even accurate. We're at over 300 agencies in 27 states now. So this is a little bit old. It effectively extends the pavement life by preserving the asphalt binder, reduces cracking and raveling, no loose aggregate, grainy residue. So it's fairly nice. There's a little bit of before and after. High public approval. Durability is proven since 2002, so it's more than 18 years now, 20-something years. We've had several engineers evaluate it and just rave about it. So I wanted to get through some of this. I got like 2 minutes left, and then I'll get out of your hair. These are just some cities that I've
Now that
worked.
we have food, we're fine.
Yeah, you're good. So St. Charles. So the city manager for St. Charles used to be the assistant city manager for El Mirage, Arizona. He mandated that we didn't mandate. He just told us to get out there because we did a bunch of work for him in Arizona. Now we're doing a bunch of work for him in Missouri. I've got a couple others. Alpine. Shane has been Shane Sorensen?
Mm-hmm.
He's been one of my longest standing clients. And if you guys ever wanted a reference on us as a company or the product, I've got a whole bunch of them in Utah County here that I would send your way. Trying to get through to show you another study that was done by a third party, not us. Texas has done a ton. And then there's some of the DOT stuff where we do the shoulders. UDOT, Florida, Georgia, Alabama. Lindy in Alabama is very active, and TxDOT. Apparently, South Carolina's project wasn't worthy of a picture. Sorry about that. These are just pictures. That's Titan Stadium in Nashville, Tennessee. some roads that we've done there. Very effective treatments there. Salt Lake School District, St. George Golf Communities, or Nevada Golf Community. Goodyear. This is the spring training facility for the Cincinnati Reds and the Cleveland, what are they called now? Guardians? Salt Lake, long time ago. Marana. You remember that bar graph that was really ugly with all the numbers on it? That was this subdivision in Marana. They're a suburb of Tucson. So they
I
were
was just
very,
gonna ask you where that was.
yeah, it's just north of Tucson. It's, they're very proactive. They finished paving on Friday. We were there on Monday putting HA5 on there. And then this was what it was, after 6 years, you had a few pop off the tops of rocks. You can see, so in the bottom left, that picture was, they had a problem with the storm drain or sewer or something, and they had to go in and fix it. But they cut that patch out. So the black stuff is HA5 that's 6 years old. That pavement is 2 years old. So you can see how fast the pavement grays out, and the HA5 sticks around and keeps the dark, pretty color that everybody likes. St. George. This was the job that I used to do at road school. This was a company come in and sold these guys that said, hey, our stuff's just the same. This was after 4 years. HA5 still there, still will have 5 more years to go before it needs to be replaced. That other stuff is gone. You pour water on it, water penetrates right down into the older stuff. And they sold this community on it's an equivalent to HA5, and it's not. It wasn't. They paid a premium for it too. And so we've since went back and redone that. In that community, the HA5 after 4 years had reduced the cracking compared to the other treatment by 9 times. So it really kept the pavement healthy. And all right, I'm past my time.
You're fine.
You talk about bad publicity. This is El Mirage, Larry Dombrowski, the guy that went to Missouri, in St. Charles, Missouri. He was the assistant city manager here, but never get positive publicity. But this was the mayor's message to the city in an election year. She was touting how much high density mineral bond they're preserving their roads in El Mirage. I think she should have gave credit to Larry, but I'm down for the positive publicity no matter what. So, but Larry was gone. So just some research out of Colorado where they tested everything. Chip Seal scored the highest on this. You guys should do this. So that subdivision, they did 14 different treatments.
Oh.
The residents, they promised them after 3 years, they went in and tore it all out and repaved it. But HA5 finished second to Chip Seal in that, which if they would have went further and longer, it would have come out a little bit different. Chip Seal's still one of the best, but HA5 I think would have been better. So this was the last thing I wanted to talk to you about. RAS, Roadway Asset Services. They're a data collection company. So right now they're doing Salt Lake City's roads. What they do is they have the magic van with all the lasers, the bells, and the whistles. They drive the van down the road, and it takes the data of how rough the surface is, how many cracks are there, what size the cracks are, looks at your signage, looks at your curb and gutter, and then they determine what to do. Scott Gordon, what he did is he took all the preservation treatment, because he's always asked, he does the data collection, he's not a preservation guy. But what he did is he took all the information that he has and he punched it in and he says, okay, what do it cost me to go 45 years with each treatment? So this is what he did. So the red is no treatment. And what his valuation was, there's the do nothing approach, which is the red line. Then the blue line is the mill and overlay. So you see at year 16, he did a mill and overlay. Then at year 27, he did a mill and overlay. And then at year like 42, he did a full depth reclamation that got him to 45 years. And so he associated a cost with that. And then the yellow line is HA5. So at year 2, he did HA5, year 10, year 17, year 21. And then I think in year 38 or 39, he did a mill and overlay. And then in year 42, he did HA5 again to get him to 45 years. So what it come up with was all the different treatment types. He gave a cost over the do nothing approach, a benefit over the do nothing approach. So if you look, you have an average PCI, which is your pavement condition. You have your public acceptance rating. It's a 1 through 10. And then your cost per center lane mile for that road. The do nothing approach, you basically 5.6 million. Partial recon is that, now you're down to 3.6 million. Mill and overlay 3.09. Seal coats 2.6. Type slurry. Now that's what your cost for 45 years per lane a mile. That's what it's giving. So high density mineral bond cost for the 45 years is 954,000 per, so you have an 83% cost savings over the do nothing approach for HA5. And the other ones have a benefit as well, but we just like to tout that HA5 comes out on top when it's valuable for you guys. So that's Scott Gordon. He's out of Texas. He's really highly thought of. Like I said, he's doing Salt Lake City's data collection. So I'll get out of your hair. I appreciate the opportunity. I'm glad for you guys to listen.
Yeah, no, that was really helpful. So just a quick question, Aaron, with respect to this HA5. I mean, I know it's probably dependent on the assessment of the road and
Right.
like with respect to age, considering some of the things that Corbett's talked about, like, is there a point at which it's probably not going to be very effective?
Oh,
age-wise?
absolutely. I've turned down more roads than I've actually done it on. Because when I come into city meetings, like I met with the guys with Oklahoma City and Broken Arrow. They come in, we went and did a tour of some roads I've been doing in South Jordan for a lot of years. And inevitably they all want to, okay, so this picture, this road, and the PCI on it's down around 50 or 60. And it's a rehabilitation at best, if not a reconstruction. And I had to tell them, no, that's not the road. Now let's go look at these roads over here where your PCI is a 70 or above. This is where your value is. And it always takes a couple conversations to help people understand. That's where I want to direct you. I'll give you what you should do on this road. If that's the road you want to preserve that year, I'll recommend whatever product is appropriate for it. But HA5 is meant to take care of the good roads. And that's where Jamie Chappell come in. He was spending all his money on the back end, changed his philosophy, went to the front end, started taking care of all of his good roads, did that over 5 or 6 years. Now he's freed up his money because those are taken care of because HA5's had such a good life cycle. It's guaranteed for 5. You probably get 6 or 7 in this climate up here with the plows. Jamie went 8 years. Well, he did work for 5 years, skipped 2 years, so he went 7 years. And then in year 8, we started doing HA5 again on the very first year that we did it. But HA5 is meant to keep good roads good. If the road is deteriorated some, maybe we'll look at a micro, we'll look at chip seal, or a combination of treatments like I do for Salem and Mapleton and Cedar Hills, where we do, it's called bonded matrix overlay. I use the aggregate, and then I cap it. Instead of using a fog seal to cap it, I cap it with an HA5. It's kind of like a cape seal. And that works really well, either on a higher volume road or a lower PCI road.
So that graph that you had where you had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, is 3 about where you would, if you get beyond 3, so 5 was the total failure. And then it was the one where you were talking about someone gave it a 4.9.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no. HA5's in phase 3, initial deterioration.
So phase 3
For
would be
sure.
about
Yeah.
would be the most deteriorated.
Yes.
Which we would want to.
Yeah. You want a PCI of 70 or above. I drove some of your roads. I've seen several roads around here that were absolutely candidates, but there are some other roads where I would probably say you should do something different, where I would recommend a bonded matrix, where you put a chip seal down and then cap it with a top coat of maybe an HA5. Obviously that's, it's just money. But it really, you need to effectively preserve your roadways. And the best way to do it is the best pavement you have, take care of it. Don't allow it to fall into rehabilitation or reconstruction. That's really the best advice I can give you. And then the second best advice would be to use the appropriate treatment on that road according to its use case and its condition. So,
I have a
yeah.
question. So our process going forward, if we were interested in taking you up on your offers here, would we have to hire the RAS to come in and do the
No.
evaluation?
No.
Or we can just go on your recommendations of what treatments are needed where, and if it's a total rehabilitation, then we have to have our engineers involved first to
Right.
rehabilitate the
Right.
road.
And if
And
you're going to
bakes and
do a
everything.
reconstruct, I would highly recommend you do your initial preservation treatment in the capital budget.
Okay,
In my experience, it's always easier to grab that first preservation treatment in the capital budget rather than building the road, millions of dollars, and then coming back at year 2 or 3 and trying to grab another 100,000 or 50,000, whatever it is.
Okay.
It's a little bit harder because everybody, well, you spent $10 million on these roads. Why are we going to spend another $100,000 2 years later?
so if we're
It's a
gonna
little
do
harder.
this, then you would go through, you would come back to us and say, this is
Yeah.
the priorities of what we should do and why we should do it,
Yeah.
or just work with Corbett to get that
Absolutely.
figured out?
I've already actually driven all your roads 3 years ago. I'd be happy to do it again. I know a lot of them.
Probably worse now.
Well, no, I noticed you had some new roads out there. So I think you have some good candidates for HA5. I think you have some good candidates for bonded matrix. I'm doing a bonded matrix project next year in Salem, Mapleton, Cedar Hills, Vineyard, American Fork.
No,
I'll
and
be
then
doing-
do you come in that and make sure that we've staggered the roads appropriately so that it's not like you had at the very beginning of your presentation, you fix them all and then they all go downhill at the same time. So do you try to fix them and then stagger, or do you stagger as you go?
I wouldn't say you stagger, you do what you can and you start at the best roads.
Okay.
And you work your way down and save some money in your budget for safety reasons, for failed areas, for potholes over the winter, and do some, crack seal in the fall and spring. Those are key components to your preservation. But yeah, I would say if I was recommend anything, I'd go through and I just did this with Hill Air Force Base, Boyer Military Housing. I was just up there today looking at the project. We did 4 projects. And when I went in and first talked to them, we drove all the roads. We broke out the sections according to their condition. And we prioritized, this area was the first year, this area was the second year, this area was the third year, and then this area was failed, so they were going to reconstruct it. That would be the last road what we touched. It was still serviceable, but it was failed. No, you shouldn't have done any preservation. So what we did in 2016, we did the first phase. They decided this failed area gets fixed, so they reconstructed it all. So that's brand new pavement. Those roads immediately went to the front of the list. And we did those in year 2. And then year 3 and 4, we did a lower PCI roads that the HA5 wasn't the right tool. We did bonded matrix on. I just drove those yesterday and I hadn't been up there in 4 years. I hadn't been on base in 4 years. And I was shocked how it performed great. Like if you guys ever wanted to take a tour or have a conversation with people that have done these treatments, Corbett could talk to you about James Thomas. There's the new engineer, Rob Hunter, Mapleton. James Chappell would be a great person to talk to. Chris Thomas, Chris.
Yeah.
Chris has been involved in our projects. Mostly I work with James, but I know Chris pretty well. And then Shane Sorensen, he's my oldest municipal client. I started working with him in 2010. So he's a great guy. I really like Shane. And then, are you guys familiar with Cedar Hills' old city manager,
Oh,
Bunker, David? So I met David in 2010 as well. So David and Shane were my first 2 clients in Utah County. He's since moved over to American Fork. Now American Fork's one of my biggest clients. He's the city manager there, and he's awesome. David he's been great for me. I hope I've been as good for him as he has been for me.
So just one quick
Yeah.
final question, if I could. So just in terms of, you got the little dollar signs.
Mm-hmm.
Can you just ballpark like a quarter mile of the HA5 treatment would generally be in the neighborhood of,
Just a quarter mile?
I'm just,
Or
yeah,
do a mile if you know.
Well, I just have to calculate it out what the going rate is right now.
don't
It's
remember.
26
Roads are
wide.
narrow.
Oh, how wide? 25. Let's do a mile times 50.
I say a mile might be easier to calculate.
It's 132,000.
for a mile.
Yeah. Well, no, that's
That's a quarter mile.
a mile long. So 5280 times 25. Oops. Sorry, I'm just trying to get square foot times, let's say 3.2. You're talking per mile, you're talking about $45,000.
45,000.
What's that cost per square foot?
About 32 cents right now.
And what if you did
wow.
2 miles?
it'd still be the same price. I'm giving you a similar price that I'm giving Mapleton, Spanish, and Salem, because I try to do it at the same time. So Spanish Fork has a contract that we've been using their unit price for Mapleton and Salem. So they've been doing that for a while. So Spanish Fork's not my client, it's Mark, my boss's client. Spanish Fork gets the best pricing out of everybody in the state. I couldn't give them the price that my boss gives them. So Mapleton and Salem and Cedar Hills are reaping the rewards of my boss working for Spanish Fork. So yeah, and you guys would as well. But yeah, so
If I could, Aaron, also, one of the things that we've talked about is requiring the developers. So I know some cities require the developer before they release them from durability to do that first round
Yep.
of asphalt preservation.
Yeah, or what I would recommend, like Spanish Fork, what they do is they take it into escrow. The developer pays the city, you guys have an escrow account, and then you can do it with your city project, which will give you more buying power. But you guys are having pretty good buying power just with your neighbors here. The other thing that I would highly recommend is look into the city of Provo, how they've done their usage fee. I know it's a it's a bad word, but like I say, I work with about 65 cities, and every single city is underfunded when it comes to their preservation, substantially underfunded. 2 to 3 times the amount that they aren't getting is what they need. And I know the city of Provo, Pleasant Grove just went through litigation.
And won their
and
case
won
in
and won their
Supreme Court.
case.
So now all the cities are looking at it.
Yeah. And it benefited me. I just got a big project signed off on 2 weeks ago by Pleasant Grove because of that. But I would highly look into that and do the usage fee. If you do a tax, and I know tax is a dirty word, but if you do a tax, then the state takes portion of it. If you do the usage fee, you guys can maintain 100% of it, but it has to be done for preservation. So
I thought we dispelled that.
Chris is going to be able to answer that better than I am. You're talking as far as like whether we get a one-to-one sort of
The state didn't take it.
yeah.
the taxes they don't?
Well, what I believe, and again, Chris is on a bullet train in Tokyo, so maybe he's not here, but our director of finance, my understanding in conversations that I'd had with him is that whether we do it as a tax increase or as a fee, we'll still get the full benefit of it, because I thought that very thing. But
That's the way it was explained to me.
Yeah, it was explained to me too,
By-
the same, that
I think
the
I
usage
want to say it
fee
was, he's not there anymore, but it used to be the engineer for Highland, Todd Train. He explained it to me that way because he did town halls and he let the people decide, because they did the same thing Pleasant Grove did, but he did town halls. Pleasant Grove just went ahead and did it. And then they had that special interest group that got mad at him. Now Highland did the exact same thing, but they did 4 town halls and they let the residents vote on how they wanted to do it. They said, look, we can continue to go do what we do, but we don't have enough funds. So eventually we're going to have to either deal with lower quality roads, or we're going to have to let some roads go back to gravel.
yeah.
Or we can do a tax, and this would go on your property tax or whatever. And Todd explained to me that then the state would take part of it. That's where I heard it from. Maybe he misspoke. I don't
No,
know.
and that was my understanding, but we actually did a town hall on a different topic relating to that very thing, and the night of, I became aware that
Yeah.
actually wasn't the case, and so I don't know.
Todd-
I can't speak authoritatively on it, but
Todd gave their residents 3 options, just to status quo, what we've been doing, do as best we can with what we got, do the tax or do a fee.
yeah.
They voted to do the fee, and they've been doing it every year. They didn't do a project this year because they were waiting to see how things played out in the legislation or the litigation. Sorry, yeah.
Yeah.
And so I imagine next year we'll be up and running again. So
And the thing I like about the fee too is that I think we might be able to also attach it to undeveloped properties, which I don't know. This is just brainstorming sort of
yeah,
stuff.
and I'm not an expert on that. I'm
Yeah.
more along the lines of going out and looking at your roads and saying, this is what I would do here, this is what I would do there, this is where your best value is, and then prioritizing them would be great thing. I'd be happy to do that for you guys if that's what you guys wanted.
Well, and what you've given us, I believe, is within reach. I think that that is not so far out of bounds that,
So if you're looking at a HA5 tool, you're probably, I would say for budget purposes, say 35 cents a foot. If you're looking at a bonded matrix, you're probably talking your eight something a yard. So we say eight, let's say 8.3 per yard divided by 9. So you're 92 cents a foot.
well, hopefully there'll be fewer of those.
They last a long time and they've done really well. I've done some on brand new roads. I've done some on very old roads. Like I did a project last year for Salem on a road that James Thomas was just like, I just got to hold this together for like 4 or 5 years. And we did it, it's 2 years ago. And it looks great still.
So is it possible then on new roads that are in developments to have our building or road standards changed so they have to put this stuff
Put it in
on
the
at
capital
beginning?
budget. Yeah, just put it as part of the
Beginning.
construction of the project. Yeah. Whatever treatment's appropriate for that road type and that condition and that situation, just make sure that you're putting that in, whether it's a chip seal, it's HA5, slurry, micro, whatever tools you guys think are appropriate, put it in the bid documents when you put it out to bid in the capital budget. I always recommend that to all my cities. Yep.
Please just keep in mind that you're looking for a PCI index of 70 or better, right?
Yes, on the HA5, yes.
For the HA5.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's just a rough, but I would say that the only roads in town that would qualify
Right
at
now.
that PCI index of 70 are the new 4 miles we just did with the water main project. So
Yeah.
don't
Are there?
get googly eyed that you can do the
Yeah,
whole city
the
for
rest of them, I
35
would
cents a
say-
foot.
The rest of your roads,
you're
I would
not.
say, would be bonded matrix, where you're talking 92 cents a foot. It'll give you that'll give you the longest extension of pavement life.
Right.
But if you do nothing, you're gonna have to start
That's
tearing
what
them
we
out,
have been
and that number goes through the roof. So, or if you're doing water lines, if you're, like you say, you've been doing water lines and you have to tear them out anyway, then just make sure that when you put the roads back in, just put your preservation treatment as part of the construction project. It's what I would recommend. I think it's a lot easier, like I said, than coming back at year 2 or 3 and trying to tack on another 32 cents a foot on a project you just spent millions of dollars on 2 years ago. Sometimes that's a hard pill to swallow. So,
So are gravel roads.
yes.
Yeah.
Thanks again, guys. I appreciate it.
Hang on a
If you have
second.
any questions,
And you're going to send us some of the slides?
I can send you
and-
some stuff that we've sent out to people. Yeah.
But also keep in mind that's a lot of this is assuming that the road was built to a standard in the first place.
Yeah.
I mean,
That's-
asphalt is great, but as soon as you start letting that water get into the subbase, all your asphalt is lipstick to protect the structure, which is the road base, the structural fill, and all that stuff underneath. So if you can protect the subbase, even if the subbase is garbage, if you can protect it and keep it dry, then whatever asphalt is on top of the garbage below is going to last longer.
Yeah. And sometimes you're going to have to make the hard decision to, okay, this road's gone too far. We need to reconstruct. Let's wait a year or 2 to do that.
All right. Thanks again, Aaron.
Thank you.
Thanks, Corbett, for setting that up. All right. No, that was very useful. Well, let's move right along to item 2, funding of culverts on Broad Hollow and Oak in conjunction with the construction of a Broad Hollow Basin. Ted Mickelson.
All right, so this update just changed 2 days ago. So we're going to give you an update to the update.
Wow. We need to wait 2 more days?
2 more days, maybe it'll change again. It's very fluid. So I'll give you just a brief synopsis of why it changed 2 days ago and what was originally changed. So as you recall last time, when we talked about this project, we have about $200,000 worth of culverts on Broad Hollow, Oak, and across Woodland Hills Drive that need to be replaced in order to facilitate the NRCS mitigation project. the NRCS is not covering the cost of those culverts. So we sought for additional funding to find another funding agency that would help us fund those culverts. And that's when we reached out to the Utah Division of Emergency Management, who handles the FEMA funding. And they said they had money available that we could use to fund the culvert portion of the project. And I think that's where we stood last time when we reported that. It was a 90%, 10% match, 90% FEMA, 10% match. Shortly after that, DEM called back and said FEMA has rejected that opportunity. The short of it is the money comes to the state can allocate the money. HMGP money is given to a state when there is a disaster declared in the state. The state then allocates that money. If all the money is not used for that disaster, the state then has the latitude to use that money elsewhere in the state, and it can be applied for. What happened is they had some money left over from one of the disasters that was declared, and that was the $200,000 we were applying for the grant. Two things that we weren't aware of, they didn't make us aware of when they told us that money was available. It was contingent on two things. One, that there was a bad calculation and the state had to recalculate to figure out that there was actually that money available and send that to FEMA. And secondly, because the application period had already expired, they requested an extension on the application. FEMA came back and said, we agree with your calculation. There was an error. You do have this money available, but we're not going to give you an extension on your request for an application. So in effect, we have the money, but you can't apply for it.
Yeah,
So
that's what we felt.
yeah. So that's where we were when we started with this update for the council. 2 days ago, so in the background, DEM continued to work with FEMA, trying to resolve this issue. Well, 2 days ago, they came back and worked it out with FEMA, and FEMA said, okay, we will accept the application for this money. They actually have 3 applications. One is ours, and they have 2 other applications. Because there's actually about 290,000. We requested 200, and 2 other agencies requested the additional 90. So DEM continued to work with FEMA, and FEMA has then granted an extension on the application period. So now the money is available, and they will accept our application. So they then emailed a couple days ago and said, if Woodland Hills is still interested, we will submit your application to FEMA and for that funding. So I talked to DEM and I asked them a couple of questions. One is a timing question, and another one is a funding question related to the NRCS. First one was, when is this money available? How long do we have to use it? And what if the NRCS project takes 3 or 4 years and this money is available next year? In short, they said timing's not an issue. You can use this money as you need it. So the timing question is kind of out of it, not an issue. Second question was, what happens if the NRCS project doesn't happen and we've already used this money to build the culverts or do the culvert project? Yeah, that was our question. In short, I had to go through and explain to them how this project could really be a standalone project. In other words, we can replace these culverts and do this drainage along Broad Hollow and down Oak, and it will still solve some flooding issues and be usable independent of the NRCS. But without this channel, the NRCS project doesn't work. That's not as much of their concern. They just want to make sure if they're spending this money that it's spent for something that works.
And their approval of it isn't dependent on the NRCS portion. I mean, it's totally, I mean, we don't have to do the other one to get this one, right?
Correct. Yeah. So I did ask that question too. Their preference was to keep them separate, not even not even tie the NRCS to this project.
He said the NRCS one couldn't be done without this.
Right. But this one can be done without NRCS.
Yeah, it's kind of flipped.
So we can do the
Benefit to our community.
So we can do the culverts in the channel. And let me step back. This funding only does the culverts. It doesn't do the channel work. The channel work is part of the NRCS funding. So in other words, we have to do a drainage channel coming down Broad Hollow. And while doing that drainage channel, we have to replace all the culverts. The NRCS project pays for the channel work. The FEMA money pays for the culverts replacements and road repairs.
Two different funding
Is
streams.
there an option for a channel with no basin and culvert?
So not through NRCS funding. We'd have to find a different, I mean, so there's 200,000 available. And that's what we estimated. It was around 160, 70,000 to do the culverts. Now, if we found a way to do the culverts and the channel for that 200,000, I think FEMA would be fine with that. But we just can't.
You have to use the money for what
It
it's
seems
set
helpful
for.
to have a gathering point of some sort to hit the culvert.
Yeah.
To really use them.
Yeah.
What would you estimate the channel to be without the basin? I mean, cost.
Cost wise,
The channel rockline ditches.
yeah, rockline ditches, right?
How much do we know how much that cost in Woodland Hills Drive that we did just the other day?
I never saw the number that Lori submitted.
Yeah, it was about 10,000, 9,800. Yeah,
Those are possible.
it was discount and volunteers and
And that was only for 1,000 feet. Just, I mean, it was like 1,005 feet, give or take.
with some free stuff, free labor and free,
Oh.
stuff.
Not all the labor was free.
Well, not yours.
Not,
Don's
not
wasn't.
Don
Yeah.
Washburn's.
But we can still, we've got options. We could probably make those.
Ben
numbers
needs a
work.
fifth job.
Yeah,
good job,
yeah,
so.
I'm with you, man. I need one
should
more
be.
too.
You've got a bigger job than me.
There's about a gap of about an hour in the day where I get to see my family, so I got to figure out how to.
Assuming
I need another job.
Corbett?
Ted?
No, I'm just kidding.
Ted, if the culverts get done, it doesn't go to waste if the NRCS project doesn't get done, correct?
Yeah, my very specific question is, do we have to pay the money back if we do the culverts? And then the NRCS project never happens. And they said, not as long as we keep it independent. When you do your request, and in the application, they ask us specifically not to mention the NRCS project because they don't want to tie the two together and have FEMA tie it together.
Right.
So in the application, we didn't say anything about that. We said this is replacing culverts for an undersized channel and for undersized culverts.
So are we able to do the culverts before we do the channel? Or no, it wouldn't make sense?
We can. It would make sense to do them together, just
Yes.
because you have one contractor that's going to do it all. And
We don't want to fill up the culverts.
Right, that's what I'm saying. It doesn't seem like it would
Yeah,
make sense to do
and-
it first.
And since timing is not an issue with the funding, we could wait and use it when the channel work's done if the NRCS project goes forward. If not, then we would have to find a way to fund the channel work because the culverts really don't do any good without the channel.
But
Because the
culverts-
channel will overtop and the culverts are going to be oversized for the channel, if that makes sense.
But the culverts are oversized if the NRCS project doesn't go through.
Yep.
The culverts are bigger, obviously much bigger than they would need to be, because you're not going to bring that water from the NRCS project through those culverts. And so you end up with 18-inch culverts that you could have got by with 12 or 15-inch culverts.
So
So it's best to wait.
any direction we
No,
go,
get 'em done.
though,
Get them
will
done as soon as you
make
can.
Broad Hollow safer during the winter. Right?
I guess that's relative to what makes it safer.
Well, the icing and all
Yeah.
that, right?
I mean,
But, I mean, Broad Hollow definitely has problems with runoff, even with rainstorms. You get rocks
Right.
across and everything.
Even with driveway snowmelt.
Right where Woodland, yes, right where Woodland Hills, it crosses Woodland Hills Drive is terrible.
Yeah.
I mean, you get all kinds of rocks there. Then going down the rest of Oak, you've got a lot of drainage and a lot of cutting and everything. So to me, the culvert project has always been the more necessary project
For
of,
sure.
of the two, especially if we can do a culvert under Woodland Hills Drive.
Yeah, that would be great.
Is that part of that calculation?
mhm.
Oh, it is? Cool. So,
Yeah.
Well,
And
and
17 different culverts all the way down.
it would also help with the melt that happens up
The ice,
on that.
the huge
Yeah.
patch of ice, right?
Up by
That's the
Rondemics.
deal. Yeah.
Yeah. And
It's helpful to have the snowplow drivers' cell phone numbers. You just text them.
so her specific response, and this is Kathy Holder with the Utah Division of Emergency Management. She said the FEMA HMGP funds should have no bearing on any other funds you get from NRCS. The one thing we need to verify, but I think you've already said this, is the FEMA HMGP project can be an independent and standalone project that can be done even if NRCS project is not done. This is the case it can process on its own timeline. The funds can be ready to go as soon as any request for information about the project FEMA has are satisfied. So that's the one thing, whenever you submit a FEMA application, the first thing they come back with is what they call an RFI. If they have any questions, they'll ask you. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. On our previous project, we had about 8 questions back from them when we put, because that basin project we did was this same funding. It was FEMA HMGP funding. When we submitted that one, they had about 7, 8 questions, but we didn't get any on the stormwater management plan that we submitted to do through them.
Do you feel like this is solid or are minds going to change again?
Well, you're talking to federal government, and like most politics, it changes with seasons. But I think,
I mean, I don't want to get my hopes up.
yeah, I feel like as long as we can satisfy them that we can do this project, and that is not dependent on the NRCS project, which it wouldn't be. In other words, it's not integral with the NRCS project enough that we have to do the NRCS project to do this project. We can do this one by itself. From what I hear, from what they're saying is we should be able to get the funding.
Is there a match requirement?
10%.
10%, which Chris
If-
already said we have.
If the project is done, can it be used towards the match requirement for NRCS?
No,
And NRCS doesn't
you can't
have
use
a
federal
match.
money to match federal money.
At this point, NRCS project doesn't have a match.
Right.
Although
And
that
that,
would make sense given federal, logic.
yeah, yeah. And I know that because I asked that question once and was told that answer. But no, but the NRCS project has no match. It's 100% covered by NRCS.
So Ted, did you say we want to apply or do we need to get council?
I told them I was coming to the council tonight and I would get back with them tomorrow.
And we're going to just use the same application we put in originally, or we tweak it just to make sure there's no NRCS mention.
No, because I didn't in the first application. Because so the lady we first worked with is no longer DEM. She left, and that's the one we did the
Salt Lake County,
Davis County. But
Davis County.
yeah, she's no longer there, and so that's when they've got a new hire now. But anyway, I've just got to let her know if we're interested in submitting the application, and then they'll submit it.
So, and is this a commitment to, I mean, because it's not, we're not voting on it. It's not on the agenda to vote on tonight. So, and that's
We're
my
just
bad.
applying, right?
Huh?
We're just applying.
Right.
So
We already voted to apply, and this is just a recertification of that original vote because it's going back to the same people.
so we had submitted this application once,
We voted on it.
and it was held up at DEM when FEMA came back and said that we're not going to extend the deadline.
Just-
Part of it
we-
hasn't
It's
changed.
a status update.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're not voting on it. So.
We
I
already
guess-
voted.
Yeah. So I guess you're free to proceed with the
Unless
application.
somebody-
Thank you for the update.
No, that's great
So,
news. That's a good idea.
Anyway, that whole update was to get us right back where we were a month ago or
Yeah,
2 months
but
ago,
hopefully
whatever.
we're back.
Yeah.
Hey, we're playing the federal game.
Yeah. Welcome to working with federal agencies, which I do a lot of.
All right. Any other questions
listening.
on the,
Yeah.
Comes from
the
former
culvert
federal
on
office.
item 2?
No, I do like that update. I think that's good news. I like that it can be independent and, because before it felt like when we were voting that we had to vote, we were kind of voting on the whole thing. But it's nice just to be able to vote on that, portion,
Yeah.
which we did already, but.
Okay. Well, then let's jump to item 3. Still you, Ted, West Lofer.
I don't know that we got any significant updates. So I met with Glenn and Kathy Anderson because a portion of the road is on their property, and also met with the neighbor across the street from them because a portion of the work is on their property as well. The meeting went very well. In effect, we just have some fill dirt that's going to go down on their property. We're not really changing. The road's not going to be on their property. It's just fill dirt that goes down on their properties. Met with Glenn and Kathy. They were really good about giving the city an easement to do that. We're calling it, it's called a fill easement because we're going to put fill dirt on their property. They're not going to pursue any compensation for the easement. They're just requesting that they be able to do some things, which are not that big a deal, I don't think. One, they want to make sure just that no major trees are large trees are destroyed during the work. And secondly, that they have the right to plant some certain plantings on that slope easement, which beautify it, which I think is fine as long as we just tell them it just can't be big rooted stuff that would tear the embankment out if it tipped over or something. And
You know what?
they were fine with that.
Sunday, coming home from church, somebody turned off and went on that road and they were hauling. And they flew on that road and the dirt and the rocks and everything flew. And I just thought, I wish they had it.
Yeah.
I wish they had it. I didn't know who it was. I wish we had it blocked off. You know, they were in
Yeah.
a Subaru or something. And they just right through there. I know they've complained about it. The Andersons have complained about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, we
They're-
tried to block it off and people keep removing the ballards there. So, I don't, there's no easy answer to that other than putting up like Jersey barriers or something across there. But Andersons have been pretty understanding of the situation there too. And we try to monitor it and at least to keep equipment off of that. And then that keeps other people off of it, I think.
Yeah,
too.
I get the pictures and the texts when there's rocks and stuff.
So we're beginning construction is what you're here to say.
Yeah, I wish. No, we're still working on the easement, the design. So I reached out to the attorney and he's going to write the easement. It has to be a legal document. And then we're working on the design. I think the plan is if we can design it over the next couple of months and if we put it out to bid, because typically asphalt is, you generally don't like to do asphalt work after October 15th to November 1st time period. I don't know that we can get it done before then, just in the nature of the way construction is right now. Everyone's so booked up. I don't even think we could get a contractor on board even if we went out today. But I think if we put it out in the late fall, early winter, we'll get some better pricing because contractors tend to like to start to plan their spring and summer work during that period. And we could probably get some better pricing if we put down. So the plan is we'll put it out to bid around that time and see if we can get some good pricing. And maybe that'll give time for Summit Creek also.
Did we decide to do the whole thing all the way, even Summit Creek side? Okay.
We're just gonna do ours.
So the road will
Yes,
still,
and it might be,
the
maybe the timing.
the road will still be closed even when we're done.
It will, yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Unless some can sell lots of lots and do their part.
Yep.
They were trying to sell quite a bit during the Parade of Homes, but I don't know how successful that was. With interest rates still the way they are.
They're record high right now.
Mm-hmm.
They're over 7.
Well, and Wayne and Jody are doing horse trading, I think, trying to see what we can do to encourage them to play ball. So, I mean, but we'll do what we're obliged to do.
Mhm.
All right. No other questions. Thanks, Ted.
Thanks.
Yeah, no
Good
problem.
report.
Yeah. If there's nothing else from me, I've got to disappear. I've got a
Okay.
Okay.
Well, thanks for being here.
family commitment. I got to really spend a little time with my family.
That 1 hour.
Yeah, the 1 hour.
Yeah. Well, my son's been in Colorado for 11 days on a fire, so he's coming home tonight. So we're gonna.
Say,
Yeah.
say hi.
You said fire. When is our fire crew going to be able to go out? Are they about ready?
Yeah, we're ready with the crew for the generally. However, So we've got the red card process pretty much done. Jamin's got his. Lance's went in today. He had some missing information, and Mark, so the same thing. But anyway, the state has all the information. But even with that, we're still to level 2 risk, which is pretty low. And we haven't had any, there's 2 systems that we look to respond on national incidents. One is called IROC, Interagency something response something, and then EMAC, Emergency Management Action something. But neither of those right now have had anybody out of Utah respond.
I'm just asking because that's what funds
Yeah, I know.
jobs for next summer. And so far, I mean, it's kind of late in the year, it feels like.
Well, actually, July and August are usually the best times, or the times when we get called the most into September. So this is kind of when the fire season, and this year is actually probably a later fire season just because of the wet spring. But yeah, I agree. I mean, this is what funds that crew, and we need to get them out. Unfortunately, it's kind of one of those, we were talking about this earlier today, it's kind of one of those things where you want, it's an oxymoron, right? You want fires so we can get our crews out, but you don't want fires because, you know, they destroy things. So you hope for fires, but don't hope for fires. So, but bottom line is there just haven't been any fires even yet that anybody's been called out on.
I was just worried about, you know, them bringing in income and
Yeah.
being able to fund it for next year.
Yeah, I agree. And if, as soon as, I mean, there's an event, we've had only, I'll say 4 significant ones in Utah, and all those were contained within a day by local agencies. There were 2 down in Beaver, 1 yesterday out on I-70 Colorado border, and that one's contained today, and the one that we had up here on Birdseye. And that one was all county. They didn't call any additional resources. So we just they haven't had any resources called out from the state yet.
All right. Well,
Thank
thank you,
you.
Ted.
Yeah.
Okay, item 4, proposed privacy policy. Jody, you taking this?
We all read it, right?
Yeah, so I don't know if anybody has any questions. I did have
Is
one
this spurred
suggestion.
because of the citizen?
Well, I think, I mean, this certainly brought it to our attention. And it's a legitimate concern that we have a policy. So other cities do. I don't know if every city does, but
Quite a few are
many
starting to
do.
have that now.
Yeah.
Just to be clear, and I already mentioned this on, when Jody emailed it, but this is a privacy policy. It is not a PII policy because there's no such thing. It's a privacy policy.
Okay,
Right.
thanks for.
And the city's already doing this in practice, we're just putting it in.
Right.
Well, and I think that the formalization of it is valuable because, you know, we know what we ought to be doing. So,
Okay.
Right.
you know, it's a policy. It's just the way we should be conducting ourselves. So there was one change.
I saw one change maybe.
So under the information gathered by the city heading, 3rd paragraph, it says the city will make every reasonable effort to protect personally identifiable.
Information?
Yeah, that
Yeah,
should be
because we're
information.
missing one word there. We either change it from identical to identity or add on information to
And that actually, that was not the change I was going to propose.
Oh.
I was proposing we take out every, because I just, not
Yeah,
acting as
it's
the
just an
city's
extra
attorney,
word.
but that creates a very high standard for us to,
Every is also very hard to define.
yeah.
Yeah,
So we were thinking either just make reasonable efforts or commercially reasonable efforts.
I think.
Commercially reasonable is pretty standard contractual language, so I think that we could utilize that. But that would be my suggestion that.
Yeah,
I'll
I
take that.
suggest
I'd say
we
every
take.
out, but I also didn't think it made sense, protect personal identifiable.
Yeah, no, that's a
So,
that's a
yeah, that's a
grammatical error,
grammar
but,
thing. So that's why I just thought we either change that word to personal identity or, and lowercase on both, or personal identifiable information uppercase. So, because
Yeah.
we're kind of keeping it consistent, but to David's point, the purpose at the beginning is the privacy policy's purpose. So it identifies it as a policy, privacy policy, not the PII.
Okay, so, other than that, anybody have any comments or questions?
Other than awesome
Bravo.
Awesome job putting
Yeah.
it together.
Well, that's Jody.
Yeah,
Okay, thank you. Item 5, Community Development Charter. Carrie?
I need to table this. Some of the people that I contacted to just make sure of confirmation with the holiday week last week were out of town. So
Okay.
I want to just make sure that they're on board before I put their name forward.
Probably a good
That's
idea.
probably good.
Yeah, so table it till next time.
Okay, so 5 and 6
Yep.
then, right? Okay. All right, thank you. Okay, Bullet Train, you there? Is he any of those, Jody? I mean, the only one I can think of is the 7046 number.
That is healthy.
If he can't.
Might be traveling too fast.
He might have lost like.
He's ahead of the speed of
Okay, can you hear me now?
radio.
Yes.
See, does 7, 8,
Can you
9.
hear me okay?
Yep. Yeah, we can hear you. Can you,
Okay. Great. I was talking earlier, nobody could hear me, so I guess I was on mute.
oh,
How are you guys doing?
Good.
Okay, we're talking 7 and 8 are the financials for, are we talking the sewer right now? Which one? Sorry.
Large purchase.
7 is large purchases.
Large purchases. So I haven't had any large purchases come across my desk since last council meeting. However, just by way of information, we are going to be refunding one large bond back to Robert Nelson, who's completed portions of his development to the tune of just over $200,000. And then the connector agreement things that we've been collecting for Summit Creek on behalf of the connector agreement we have will just be over about $300,000. So we'll be giving those two checks in the next week and a half back, but those aren't purchases. I don't have any, unless somebody in there has a purchase, I don't have anything.
The jaws of life.
Approved
Yeah, those were approved.
and ordered, right? I think,
Yep.
okay, yeah, done deal.
Okay, great.
All right. Well, if nothing more on item 7, then April and May financials.
I had a question. On May, what was the $63,000 check to US Bank for? A loan pay, some sort of payment? What was that? Do you know what I'm referring to?
Yeah, some of our bonds were switched around about a year and a half ago. But I'll have to actually get that exact information for you, which one it was for.
Yeah, it went to US Bank. So, and I think it was in May. Do you know what it was?
Yeah,
Joe?
they usually,
Chris, is that the payment for the road bond that we took out?
yeah, so we've got US Bank, Bank of Utah, Zions Bank. And I can't remember which bonds go which, but they're typically bond payments for either roads. Even our water is being run through a bank.
Okay.
Okay, I apologize, I don't have it here, but I'll look that up and send an email out to the council for that.
Okay, that was just my only question, just because it was so large. Just wondered what, I did look through all of it.
So, thank you.
All right. Any other questions or comments? Okay, then item 10, Chris, and then I think that's it for you, sewer rates.
Yeah, this is ugly. So Basin City is giving us a 6% rate increase for sewer this starting basically right now. Our current rate is $74.25 per month. So really 6% is not that great of an increase. However, Mary and Corbett, you might fill in the blanks here. We have to start doing our own maintenance, certain aspects of maintenance for the sewer line now. And we have received some bids early in June that maintenance yearly will run roughly $13,000, $13,000 to $15,000. We're going to go on the $13,000 side. Divide that by the 80 homes that are currently connected to the sewer. That's about $13.55 a month. So if we take our current rate plus the 6% raise, plus the maintenance fee of $13.55, plus I think we should have a little bit of overhead on there, and I put 2% in there. Obviously, you guys can do whatever amount you want on that. That brings our sewer rate from $74.25 per month to $94.93. Just beware there's going to be more rate increases coming. I don't know if this year or not, but sewer is one of those things that is pretty regulated.
So, hey, Chris, on that sewer rate, so Payson is increasing by 6%. We're taking on the maintenance. They're not dropping it, or were they going to raise it more than 6%? Because currently they cover that cost. And we thought by taking it on ourselves, we were going to drop that bill to our residents. Corbett's written, nodding his head no.
Yeah, they didn't offer us, they basically have mandated that we take on the maintenance.
Yeah.
And the contract, we just barely got it. But I mean, it's something where, I mean, we could potentially use it as an opportunity to try to negotiate the price down. I mean, there's nothing settled. I mean, right now they're on the hook to maintain the sewer too, but you know, Corbett and I went to a meeting with, I don't know.
Travis Jacobson.
Yeah. And Corbett asked the question, you know, what if we don't agree to this? And I mean, obviously it's the nuclear option, but they said, well, we'll cut off your sewer service. So, I mean, we obviously don't want to find ourselves in that predicament. That's true. It's not our problem.
They call that a sewer overflow. It's your sewer.
Yeah, you have now an EPA problem.
I'm like, I have a septic tank.
But,
Well,
So it's
but
gonna be
it's something that,
$94 per month for those that are currently hooked up, and then it will be 94 going forward for anyone that then signs on to be on the sewer.
so a few years ago, because the problem that we've got is we have an expensive sewer line and not enough users.
Right.
So we talked about actually like lowering the connection fee or waiving it even so that people would connect. And then that would distribute these ongoing costs across a greater number of users. The question I would have is that even feasible? Like, do we have enough people that could connect without, like, you would incur a huge bill, because you'd have to basically repipe from your house to the city.
no, I actually did just connect because I didn't have to do that.
Okay.
I had it plumbed for, and we just lowered our impact fee. So, I mean, it did just go down a lot. And, I mean, but to your question, I don't know if lowering the connection fee is going to, I mean, because if you do have to dig it out, I mean, that's tens of thousands
I
of
get
dollars.
that. So I'm leaving those people out of the equation for now.
You're just talking to people that
I'm
are already
just
plumbed
talking
for it.
people who are plumbed for it, who could just switch something in their house. How many of those people do we have, and would it make any kind of appreciable difference in this $94 number that could attach?
And all that would do is decrease the $14, right?
The 400. Well, but
Well, the $14
but-
per person per month, right? So it would disseminate that to it would take it from 14 maybe to 10.
It would take it from the 1547 to about
Oh, wow, that's not much.
Whole dollar
savings.
off.
but you're only getting $400 for a connection. All the other money that gets collected goes to Payson, and you can't lower that unless you're willing to pay for it for them. I'd be careful doing that because that's an impact fee, and the impact fee has to be fair for everyone that utilizes the infrastructure installed by the impact.
You're talking, Dave, what Dave is proposing, you'd be careful with that.
I'm trying to clarify what Dave is proposing. You're only getting a $400 connection fee. That's called a connection fee. The $3,500 is an impact fee for infrastructure installed by the city that everybody benefits. Everybody pays the same amount that benefits from that infrastructure that was installed by the city. Then there's an impact fee that goes to Payson. You don't get to dictate what that fee is unless you're willing to pay for it for those people. I'm just trying to clarify what you're offering the residents to incentivize connecting to the sewer.
Yeah. Well, so
I'm
the
not
impact
telling-
fee is kind of an untouchable one. The connection fee, I guess, could be maybe, but
But you're only
that's-
talking 400
that's
bucks.
not
Yeah,
a
it's
huge
not a huge
amount.
Yeah.
thing.
And the
No,
benefit-
I just remember talking about it and I was like, somehow we've got to move the needle to get more people connected. Otherwise,
Require it like other cities do.
Yeah, we could do that.
Mandate.
For
Other,
those that
other
aren't-
cities,
We do with new construction.
but other cities mandate if you're within 250 to 500 feet. If you're within 250 feet of a active public sewer, you have 1 year to connect. That's what other cities do.
Yeah, I mean, if
It's
you
a
think you're
political
going to get
nightmare.
pushback from a $98 monthly fee, try mandating a sewer connection for thousands of dollars per resident. I mean, I think this is definitely the less impactful way to handle it. And I mean, it's not ideal,
But we
but,
can mandate going forward on anyone so that we're not coming back.
which we already do.
that's done.
Right.
See, our problem
That's
is
what I
if we
meant.
bring everybody on, we'll take a $95 a month fee down to 80 something. You know, what we really need to do is figure out, is there any possible way to negotiate the rate to Payson to get that decreased, which it sounds like they don't, it sounds like they're trying to price us out of using them.
I don't get that sense. I just think that it's a money pit for them that they weren't anticipating it being.
I mean, even their own residents are paying anywhere between $63 and $68. So it's not like they're gouging us.
Yeah.
Yeah, sewer treatment's expensive.
Yeah.
Why did we ever send it all the way to Payson?
Because Salem wouldn't, and Salem was also in the process of expanding there, and so there was a lot of uncertainty for them.
Mm.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know
Santaquin's
what goes
expensive.
into them calculating their fees.
Santaquin's
Did you
bills
get the
are more
sense
than
that, I mean,
Payson's.
that they're doing anything other than just
I
trying
lived
to
in Santaquin
recoup
and Payson.
costs?
The bills in Santaquin
But
are higher.
again, keep in mind, it's an enterprise fund. And just like the state regulates enterprise funds for us, they regulate enterprise funds for Payson. They have to turn a minimum 2%, maximum 6%. So it's not a moneymaker. I mean, they gave us the option to just charge us for the treatment, but it doesn't pencil out as far as trying to save money. You're just paying for what the service is. And it's like you say, it's expensive.
And Corbett is also considering a metering effort, I guess, that might be able to lower what the residents here pay some, but I don't think that's,
Metering.
Especially- so instead of on just an averaged per user basis, well, you can explain it better.
Well, the idea was that Payson charges based on the effluent treated, right? So all of the Payson residents that are on old pipe where there's high infiltration, they calculate that based on what actually ends up at the sewer plant. Well, Woodland Hills, it's all relatively new pipe with very little, if any, infiltration. The only infiltration you could count on from Woodland Hills would be the water that gets into the sewer manholes through the lid, through the vent holes in the lid. So trying to take advantage of a more efficient system in Woodland Hills compared to an inefficient in Payson, you couldn't pencil. It didn't work. You couldn't pay for a meter. Again, you only got 80 connections. You couldn't pay for the meter. You couldn't pay for the SCADA and save money. Now, if Payson would do it and let us go off of water meter usage and not have to pay for a meter, but that's how close it was to trying to make it pencil. We could only increase it or decrease the overall fee to the residents by about $4,000 a year. And then you try to pay for a meter and it flips it the other way. So it's close, but.
So I didn't realize you'd already done the math on that, and so it doesn't.
Yeah, once I got the numbers for the SCADA, the meter, the installation, and they were, again, rough, estimates on my part, but they were educated estimates.
Right.
You couldn't make it pencil.
Okay, well, it's good to know. Thanks. All right, well, any other thoughts on that?
That sucks.
That's a thought.
I think that's what he said. 9417, Chris? Now you're muted.
Your phone just got muted.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, 94.93.
490.
So $95 basically.
So basically, yeah.
Now, do we have the ability to just flip that switch and start charging the appropriate amount so we're not subsidizing it? Or do we need to vote on that?
I
Or
think we're voting on it tonight.
Well, yeah, we're
aren't we?
voting on the fee schedule, it taking effect, I would assume, as of tonight, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then do we need to change the commercial? Do we even
I
have a
don't think the
commercial
commercial is
rate?
gonna-
do. They didn't give us an increase rate. I think that we would want to. We would want to increase it by the same amount that we are increasing the residential. So I'll work on that while I'm sitting here.
Okay, thank you. Yeah,
So Jody, is part of those 80 connections the church is?
Yes, but for clarity,
Okay.
you don't have a commercial connection. You have an equivalent residential. So yeah, you have a church, and that commercial is translated into an equivalent an ERC, and then they pay the rate. They pay the residential rate for their equivalency compared to the residential.
so just churches, maybe one or two houses, and really large families. I'm only kidding, but there's not that many people that would apply to, right? Or not that many structures.
Just the churches, the community center, but even at that, the church might be 6 ERCs, and so it's 6 times the residential rate. The community center might be 1 or 2 or 3 ERCs, which is 2 or 3 times the residential rate.
Okay,
Well, but that commercial rate is
Is the
based
equivalent, so-
on an equivalency to residential, because that's how Payson translates it to us. No? I don't know what I'm talking about.
cut his mic. All right, well, so someone that knows what they're talking about is gonna figure a commercial base rate then, right, that we'll be able to vote on? Or maybe not.
Yeah, because it's about $17 more than the sewer base rate for residential right now.
Okay,
So I'll
we'll take
figure it
the
out.
Times that by
13.
Yeah.
6% to the 9180, and then I'll take, I'll work.
Okay.
all right.
Make out Excel.
Okay, anything else? All right, thank you, Chris. Item 11, release of durability and performance bonds for Four Seasons Plat C and D. Wayne, is this you?
Chris
It was Chris, and he kind of mentioned it.
Oh, okay, so there's no further discussion on that, even if you want it. Okay, city grants. Carrie, UDOT, ARPA?
No, well, I think Mark was going to give us a presentation, but has asked to postpone that till our August meeting
Okay,
on the ARPA.
okay, very good. All right, Doral, anything for fire? Janet, Ben, Parks, Trails, Recreation? Okay,
Wayne still needs, I can't pin our friend down, so we don't have a site plan.
all right, Councilmember Hilliard?
I've got nothing. We haven't met for roads and haven't met for parks and trails and recreation.
Perfect. Councilmember Kinnison?
Just that we cruised the city successfully on the 4th, no incidents. Not only that, there weren't any fires day and night of the 4th in the southern county here, so people were really well behaved.
which was shocking.
It was shocking. I mean,
Because
I haven't had one of those years for a long time.
I went up above and was watching. There must have been billions of fireworks going off.
In
Yeah.
Salem especially, I
I
saw a
mean, that-
million in Salem.
Talk about burning money.
For a lot this year. I agree.
Are
I'm sure
we,
you weren't watching
are
drone
we still at
shows.
low fire danger? I mean, the signs say that. We should be at moderate, right? Because it seems really dry, like the grasses and everything seem really dry.
Yeah,
Okay,
but Ted did say that, because I thought, because usually on the 4th it's extreme, but he said that he was basing it off of, well, I'm not sure where the standard
He got
comes
a new
from.
reading now and the standard is high here. So
Mhm.
if you walk out in the city anywhere, it's crunchy when you walk.
Well, I just noticed the last few days since we hit the high temperatures, it seems really dry.
And then the other thing I wanted to mention, because you probably don't know this, when our wildland crew is in town, they train with us twice a month and they train with us today again for the 3rd time in a row. And we love it. If we have a brush fire in our city, we're calling them. I mean, they're coming to help and they're really good at wildland fires. So I just really like having them in town and when we train together, they have a lot of good information.
Well, and Lance is just in Salem, so he's close.
Yeah, so, well, and they're in our city every day. too,
Yeah.
At doing things and
Yeah,
that-
they're being
I'm
put to
just-
good use, it
I'm just
seems.
saying, yeah, those couple hours of them sharing with us, even if we are paying for their wage, it's really worth it to get a good team built, to be able to fight a brush fire in our city fast. So I like that.
I also wonder, so I actually just texted Ted, because I've still got some trees that need to be taken out or branches or whatever. I wonder if we might advertise that again, that you could have them come to your house as long as you pay their wages and help.
I can
help
put that
fix
back
some
in the
things.
newsletter. We kept it in for a couple of months, but I could put it back in.
I think it would be worthwhile, at least until they do get called out.
That's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Lunt.
So I haven't met, we haven't met. City events, though, we're meeting next week too. We had all the big things, I talked about this before, set up for Woodland Hills Days, but we're just gonna meet and work on some of the little things this next week. So, yeah, so that's that.
All right. Thank you. Councilmember Malkovich.
Newsletter, do any of you have anything else you want to put in? Last time we focused a lot on fire department. We had about the new truck, we had about appreciation of our fire and EMS. We had Ted gave a letter that I put in. We tried to highlight, one of the ordinances was cutting the brush down to the 6 inches between the 30 feet of the road and your home. That is an ordinance, and we want to make sure as it dries up, that they actually keep that vegetation down in the city. We're highlighting also the noxious weed problem and making sure people are aware that they need to treat that on their own. We used to as a city, and I've been getting some calls from people saying, well, why isn't the city still doing it? Well, that's a long story, and we no longer do it. But so we request each resident to do it on their own. But if you have anything in addition that you would like in this next time, let me know. If there's a flyer, I've been putting save the date for Woodland Hills Day, but if there's any other information, last time I put your number and the Slater's number so that people could contact if they wanted to volunteer. But if there's anything else you want me to put it something different each time, start sending me small little clippets, because I think people respond to those more than just one whole long thing.
What's your deadline?
Well, you just send it to me and I'll just, whatever you give me, I'll just put it in the next one.
And then and I never published it, but I went to the fireman dinner and I took a bunch of really cool pictures. And I had the last
Send them to
call
me.
that I videoed, which was really cool. And I talked to Ted and asked him if I could post them, and then I never did.
Well, why don't you send them to me and I'll put those out, because I was out of town for that dinner. I was out of the country actually, but I would love to put those in. I think everything we can do.
I got
to
some
highlight
really
the-
good pictures.
The positive of it. I think it really is helpful. We put in a lot of stuff about fireworks for the month, and we told them that one, there was going to be the the patrols, and two, there is, we actively prosecute and let your friends and neighbors and everybody know. I think that having the banners at the beginning of town, as well as our social media posts, as well as the newsletter, people are getting it and they're making sure that they're not,
Should take a picture of that boo-boo on the roundabout.
yeah.
Yeah. Is his insurance gonna fix that?
I haven't gotten, Deputy, do you happen to know?
Insurance should be contacting the city, so, yeah, that's,
Did he just, was he texting, daydreaming?
it was a county vehicle?
It's a county roundabout, yeah.
Oh, then, they'll have to
They'll
go
get
through
it,
the
not,
county.
the city won't get
Okay,
it.
so I wasn't sure about that. So that's not
Yeah.
ours?
No,
Okay.
We take care of it as far as
Pulling the weeds and.
landscape.
Yeah, that's why I
So-
assumed it was ours to rebuild.
so deputy, what
Hmm.
would, what do we want to put in about that accident? Don't text and drive, don't fall asleep, don't,
Don't
Yeah.
forget
just be
it.
careful.
I was off duty when it took place. I just figured they came down the hill and hit
No,
it.
they went up.
He was
Yeah.
coming up.
I was
And
like,
he drove
wow,
over
someone
the
was not
little
paying attention.
divider.
Yeah, they said everybody who was there, I was getting the text saying, I was right behind this guy. He didn't even stop. He just went straight into it like as if he didn't even know it was there. And I was like, okay. And then when we got the reports of, okay, they're hauling bricks off of him and they're doing all this other stuff and, scary that people couldn't see a big roundabout with flags sticking out and lights.
And trees that are way too tall.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
But if there is anything else, we're obviously not having a lot of reports at this time. It's just mostly safety, fire hazards, making sure that we're updating ordinances all the time. That's one thing Jody and I do. Talk over which ordinances we put in about, again, the grass, but also the rooster issue. So I always highlight and actually link it to the ordinance so they can go back and look for sure what we're talking about in case it wasn't explained well.
We still have a rooster.
But, trying hard to just make
Alert
sure that
local
we're
law
giving adequate information on things in our city and then some things roundabout as well.
Take it to Costco.
All right. Thanks,
Stick it-
Gary.
And then emergency management, we're still focusing on preparedness. We still meet the first and third Tuesdays of the month. We have quite a big group now that are coming and focusing on the 12 different areas of the Be Ready program that the state has. And so Erin has been doing a good job with that. Spencer Wells has been working with the deputy to try to get our neighborhood watch program going. I attend 2 or 3 meetings a week, depending on where it is. And this morning we did have an update on wildland fires throughout the state, similar to what Ted gave before, that have been the main problems, but also just making sure wildland interface ordinances are being enforced. And I'm always so proud to be able to say, yes, we've already done our chipping, because a lot of people are just starting their chipping. And then just highlighting that increased risk that we have at this time and reminding people, especially those, even if they're going to go on public lands to camp for the weekend, be mindful, build a proper fire pit, do those kinds of simple things, make sure it's put out. About U.S. Forest usually goes through and checks all of those fire at campgrounds, and usually it's close to 80% aren't put out correctly. People say, oh, it was overnight and it's cold, we're fine. And they don't really either put the excess water on or cover it, spread it out with their shovel and put dirt on it or whatever. And so a lot of unintentional fires come from abandoned camp fires. So, and we have a large amount of public land. So, and then the other thing is another fire center is opening up in Bluffdale, and then the state is getting $18 million for wildland fire issues. And I asked if any of it might be available for grants for our fire department to do some mitigation work. And they're still working on where that fire mitigation money will go to, but we'll keep an eye on it.
All right. Thank you. Councilmember Pratt?
Well, surprisingly, Public Works Water didn't meet either. So, anyway.
So a big zero,
A
big goose
donut on
ouch.
Public Works, man.
It's summertime. It's hard.
Thankful for Corbett keeping us running.
Yep.
Amen.
All right. And then personnel, I don't have anything to report. Upcoming agenda items. All right, other than no meeting, no second meeting in July, so
And then the truth
don't
and
anybody
taxation.
show up. Oh, man, buzzkill. Yes, and the truth and taxation.
Is after that. Sorry, just reminding you.
Okay, well,
Such a fun night.
then let's take let's reconvene at 8:25 and we'll start the city council meeting.
So that's what I was.
Yeah.
Downstairs, if we could find a place.
All right, we will call our city council meeting to order. Councilmember Lunt, would you offer the invocation, and Councilmember Pratt, would you lead us in the pledge?
Our dear, kind, and gracious Heavenly Father, we're so grateful that we could gather here this evening as a city to discuss items that we need for our community, and please help us to be wise in our decisions and to make sure we study and have all the information and to be mindful of what our citizens want and what will be best for our community as a whole. And we're so grateful for this opportunity to serve. And we say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Please join me in the pledge of allegiance. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we will open the public comment portion. Nothing here.
Ryan, you got anything?
Anything online?
Nope, not me.
3, 2, 1. Public comment portion is closed. Item 19, consent agenda, city council meeting minutes, June 13, 2023.
I'll make a motion.
Okay, motion to accept those by Councilmember Hilliard,
Second.
seconded by Councilmember Malkovich. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Can we take 20 and 21 together?
Let's do it.
Okay.
Ooh, so daring.
I make a motion to accept the financials.
Okay, a motion by Councilmember Malkovich,
I'll second it.
seconded by Councilmember Lunt. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Item 22, release of Four Seasons Plat C performance bond, cash $148,384, and Plat C durability bond, cash of $14,838.
I'll make a motion to release those two, both 22 and 23.
I'll second that.
Okay, doubling up, Councilmember Pratt makes the motion, seconded by Councilmember Hilliard. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Those motions carry.
That's a good time to hit them up for a donation for Woodland Hills Days.
I can't think of a better.
We kind of calling him.
All right, item 24, resolution 2023-20. If anyone's feeling really outrageous, I guess you could even maybe do 25 too.
I think we should.
Okay,
I'll make a motion
all right, a motion
for
by
24
Councilmember
and
Hilliard.
25 with
Okay,
April and May's check disbursements.
very good.
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Malkovich. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Item 26, resolution 2023-22, amending the city fee schedule for the increase in the monthly sewer fee. And the pressure's on, Jody. Did you get that math done?
So the commercial, well, let's start with the residential. The residential will go to $94.93, and the commercial will go to $112.80.
80.
Okay.
This is a no-win situation.
Nobody wants to.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'll move this.
I'll make a motion.
I'll second it. And I just second it with,
Okay.
well, it's just,
There's nothing we can do.
Unless we're willing to build our own sewer treatment plant, which would be a way
That sounds
more.
more expensive.
So no.
We've had a road,
So
we have a few
I'll make a
roads.
motion to approve that. Or
Wait, yeah,
seconded.
yeah, seconded.
We have an empty basin.
We don't want to fill it
with that.
That's right, the fenced one, yeah.
Bob, I think will be glad he moved.
Sorry. Everybody else will decide to join him.
Sorry, joke.
We'd have to pump it up.
Awful.
It's a thought.
It's a bad thought.
All right, so Councilmember Hilliard made the motion, Councilmember Pratt seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. It's 27 tabled. 28, we didn't have any. And 29, approval of the policy and procedure
I make that motion to
I'll
approve
second
that
it.
as amended, right?
as
Yeah.
amended.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's good.
City will make commercially reasonable efforts to protect. Okay, that reads as amended. Okay, who made the motion?
First and second.
Okay, Councilmember Pratt, seconded by Councilmember Malkovich. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, any opposed? That motion carries.
Do we need a closed session?
Well, we have had some updates, so if you would like to have a closed session, there is some legal developments that we could discuss.
I'll make a motion to go into closed session for the purpose of receiving legal updates.
I'll second it.
Okay, Councilmember Pratt makes the motion, seconded by Councilmember Lunt. Councilmember Lunt,
Yes.
Councilmember Kinnison,
Yes.
Councilmember Pratt,
Yes.
Councilmember Hilliard,
Yes.
Councilmember Malkovich.
Yes.
Okay, we are in close. Okay, we are back in open session.
Motion to adjourn.
We adjourn.
Well, I think you started
Yep.
first. so.
Yep.
Motion by Councilmember Kinnison,
Yep.
seconded by Councilmember Malkovich. All in favor?
Aye.
We're adjourned.